Okay, so before I begin, I do have a few things to mention. I do have a script and won't be doing much else besides reading from it, so this is more like a podcast you can listen to while doing something else rather than an actual video you need to watch. Still recommend reading this book. While I will give brief summaries, it is always in your best interest to not take everyone at their word and to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. In this case, it will help you better visualize what I'm doing. It is also possible you will end up disagreeing with the changes I am presenting in this video because your experience was different than mine. Or you may catch things that I miss that would change things. Is this the best way to do this, or to make the book the best it can be? Who knows, but most likely no. Since the author isn't involved in any of these changes, it can't be, because there are so many ways this could be done differently. And no two readers think the same about a story, just like no two authors will write the same story. The point of this is not to showcase how I can craft a perfect story. While I do see missed potential, there were plenty of people who enjoyed it for what it was. This video is meant to engage your mind rather than to entertain it. And by that, I mean this process is supposed to exercise, practice, and condition your mind to get better at this, because almost everything you do is all about adapting the right mindset. My sentences are so weird. The right mindset, thought processing, and decision making. I think you get my point anyway. Creativity is a skill and should be treated like a muscle you need to constantly exercise to maintain it. And the more you do it, the more this stuff will go on in the background while you're writing, and the more your instincts and gut feelings will be right about writing a story. Some may think I should just write my own story with what I wish this story did rather than do all this for one already published. However, all the changes I'm presenting are unique to this story and can't be applied to full effect in a story of my own unless it's a complete knockoff of this one. And I have no interest in doing that. I have my own stories I am writing that includes the use of dreams, some of what this story goes into, and some of the new ideas and angles I'm presenting. But if you give a group of authors the same story, baseline of ideas, each author will come up with something different. Already said that. We're in an age where there really are no new ideas under the sun. The only thing that's new is what each author chooses to do with these ideas, and which ideas they mix together. Two people who have no interaction whatsoever with each other can create something vastly similar, but still have unique and intrinsic identity due to being an extension of the author who wrote the story. My story does not have the same characters, the same plot, the same romance, the same nuances and relationships between characters, or the same magic system. There's so many different things, but there are elements to it that match. And you'll probably find this in your stories and can use some of this for inspiration in your stories as well. Next, I'll be getting into the promo and promises that we get when we pick up this book. So first, I'm going to read the summary. The realm of Azanor has been cursed. Every new moon, magic flows from the nearby mountain and brings nightmares to life. Only magicians, who serve as territory wardens, stand between people and their worst dreams. Clementine Madigan is ready to follow in her father's footsteps as the warden of Hearswith, even though she yearns to study the wilder side of magic. Instead, she must record townspeople's nightmares, so she and her father are prepared for the danger of the new moon. When her father's domain is challenged by two magicians, Clementine is drawn into a century-old conflict. She seeks revenge on one of the brothers who dueled with her father, but as she gets closer to the handsome young magician, secrets begin to rise, and Clementine, once keen on vengeance, must unite with her rival and face the realm's curse, which seems to be haunting her every turn. And then from the quotes of people who said something about it, first is just a little excerpt that was on the website, I think. From acclaimed author Rebecca Ross comes a rich and nuanced story about vengeance, family, and the captivating power of dreams. And then this is from Sienna Smart, author of Witches Steeped in Gold. So what she says is, Ross has spun a lyrical web of rivals and romance in a lush, sweeping world where dangers lurk, secrets are guaranteed, and trusting anyone is a mistake you'll make only the once. Ideal. And then for Isabel Ibanez, I butchered that, I know, author of Woven in Moonlight. I'm still interested in reading all of these, even though I don't agree with their assessment, but I'm just like that. So, gorgeous, deftly plotted, and utterly unexpected. Dreams Lie Beneath is an atmospheric tale filled with lush details and dark magic, a beautiful story equal parts thrilling and romantic, and helmed by a strong-willed heroine who had my support and sympathies from the first page. I cannot tell you how hard it was to say heroine instead of heroine, which I always said in my youth. Anyway, next is by Publishers Weekly. In imaginative mythology, distinguished... I'm sorry. I have a lot of opinions, and I'm really bad at hiding them. So, in imaginative mythology distinguishes the standalone fantasy Abundant intrigue, escalating romantic tension, and twisty plotting keeps readers on their toes. I tried this so many times. Can't not. And yes, I'm kind of reacting like this, but also I don't want the author to like feel bad. I know that a lot of people would say it doesn't matter, but it does matter. This is a personal issue of mine that I need to work on. Okay, because I overly critique things, especially my work. So if you think I'm harsh on these authors I'll be doing these done differently on, my opinion on myself and my own writing is worse. So there's that. Clementine, from Bulletin of the Center for Children's Books. First of all, this is not a kid's book. Well, I mean, it's not really adult either, but Clementine is rash, bold, and confident, and the inevitable romance that seems fated from almost first sight is still quite welcome, well-developed, and memorable. Also, I still feel bad about the laughing thing. It's a good book. It's just, to me, it didn't reach the potential it could have reached, especially for my interests. I'll get into it later. I'm sorry. I'm going to be thinking about this the whole time now. Okay, so School Library Journal. With the atmosphere and pacing of a fairy tale, this is reminiscent of both Caraval and Finale by Stephanie Garber. The combination of mystery, magic, action, and will, I think there was supposed to be another word there, will satisfy even the most selective fantasy readers. Okay, and part of the reason why I find this so funny is, let's see, I'm going to read the compliments. I have it in a different order, but I'm going to read the compliments of reviewers first, especially like the ones that are first up in like the Goodreads stack of comments. These are the language that these readers use. Magic infused in every page, captivating, whimsical, intricate storyline, phenomenal world building, luscious and terrifying, bewitching characters swept away in a world of dreams and nightmares, truly unique, entirely magnificent, evocative, lush, raw, potent, vivid, beautiful, realistic, gripping, subtle info dropping, atmospheric world building, seamlessly weaves together the struggles and enigma of magicians, perfect mix of fantasy, action, and romance, brilliant and creative masterpiece, utterly divine, cut above, relatable main character. I might get into this later, but if not, I do want to have a quick note of a lot of this came from either like fledgling authors or like really like bigger book reviewers. Not all of them, but in like the way they were written, it's like they were writing their own novel while trying to write this review, which there's nothing wrong with writing a good review, but in my mind it is far better to like present the good like and the bad, and some of them did that. Like some of what somebody said in this thing also I put into criticisms because they saw it from both ways. But expectation is really what's going to ruin this book because it does not meet the expectations or the promises it gave. So next I'm going to be doing the criticisms. Okay. Shallow characters and plot, confusing, poorly written, underdeveloped, unintriguing, anticlimactic, magic underused, ending not tied up well, rushed ending, plot is hopelessly complicated, too many things that didn't work together, connections and interactions between characters didn't feel organic, actions didn't make sense, so choices didn't make sense is what that really means. Many things introduced weren't addressed, main relationship wasn't driven by anything, nightmares weren't interesting or exciting, no dueling magicians. There's like 1.5 scenes of that. Some plot points didn't seem to have a purpose, no urgency or high stakes, no consequences for actions, and then there's boring. I do disagree with some, but I agree with most. Oh, I have an opinion section. I forgot about that. I haven't been getting much sleep lately. So, my opinion, while I lean more towards what the criticisms say, I will say the prose is very pretty, and there are parts where it's there for more than just being pretty and can really help visualize a scene, capture emotions, and while everything was there, it wasn't really fleshed out. They were just there to be there in a lot of ways, it felt. I get more into this later, I feel. So I'm going to move on to tropes. So these are like the tropes that are essentially promised or that the reviewers mentioned they liked about it or wanted more of. So magicians, dueling, curse, nightmares coming to life, interesting history, and great world building. I guess I didn't need to do that, but those are kind of like trope things that you would tag a book with. rivalry, family love, secrets, deceit, character development, enemies to lover, romance, revenge, hidden identities. One, Ned. Don't know what that was supposed to be. Mr. Darcy, wound tending, court intrigue. The ones I'm going to say were best, that were the best, would probably be secrets? Oh man, I'm sorry, Rebecca Ross. Again, it's not that there's none of this there, it's just that they were barely there from a person who's read fantasy. I get into this again later. This is why I have a script. Don't know why I don't want to follow it. Okay. So another thing I heard a lot of was something sinister lies beneath the surface. And the way it was mentioned at times leads me to believe it's mentioned in the book or promotional material as well, but I just don't remember it that much. But essentially the reviews said it felt like there was something sinister, like underneath the surface. Like they were going through this whole explanation, and they're like, but there's this. And I do not know why they insist it's a mysterious something, since we already know what it is, and it's not revealed to be anything sinister because it's not really revealed or utilized at all. It's just there. And there are many elements that could have done it. That could have done what? Oh, the something sinister belief. I don't know. Like the nightmares, the shadows, mirrors / stone hearts, an ancient legend, evil land. But it's pretty much the backdrop to make a trope-filled story that unique, since it wouldn't be unique without it. I do appreciate the attempts at the unique trope thing, because everyone loves certain tropes even if they don't call them tropes. Sometimes they're just called preferences. So if you were a reader who reads a lot of the typical romance and plot tropes that were promised, this really would seem like a creative and unique book. But if you're... I'm sorry, this is so small. But that's as far as it goes. So it's not great for readers whose main reason for reading it is for the fantastical aspects about it. But some people even didn't even like the romance and stuff, or the characters and how they were portrayed. But here is how I think of it. I think of it as a museum or a rich person's house that has all these cool artifacts, but they're just on display and there's no real explanation or history to them. Or a shop where, like, you can actually see these cool items it has, but you can't actually, like, use them, like they have no use to them. I wanted to put a list of all the things that needed development, but that's pretty much everything. Again, it's not because it's terrible. There's just a little of it all and we need more. We got the pieces, we just need to move them off the display and make them usable. Whew. Okay. Okay, so quotes. This is kind of to show, I should have had a script for this too. But the reason why I'm saying these quotes, these are all the ones that are picked from the Goodreads website. And a lot of them are really good and they make the story seem really interesting. But again, they don't amount to much. And then another one is to show kind of exactly how immersive it kind of is. So if you want to skip this, just go to Goodreads and read them yourself. So, but sometimes things must break before they can be made whole again, so that they can be forged into something stronger. One does not realize how powerful a dream is in the sleeping world as well as the waking one until it has been stolen from them. Next one is, you challenged me as if you were a nightmare on a new moon. You turned my fire into smoke, my wind into dust, my light into shadows. I think I remember where that one's from. Dreams often revealed one's greatest vulnerability. Dreams were doors that led into hearts and minds and souls and secrets. I'm not going to read that one. It will make you colder, but even the deepest of ice eventually gives way to fire, Clementine. So, like, they use a lot of, again, like, provocative type quotes and language and stuff. But, like, it would be so much better if there was more stuff to back it with. There's more. I'm not going to read all of them. It's hard to read. They're really small. I did not think that through. I will read this one. Because it's kind of like the whole glistening kind of romance type stuff. But Clem, Phelan called to me again, his voice sharp and beautiful as a glass in my mind. I forced my answer down in the tangled vines of my lungs, in the wild briars of my being. So, like, there's actually a lot to that like represents the characters themselves and how they react to things. And then the next one is, I approached him, ignoring I'm really bad at reading, I'm sorry. I approached him, ignoring how he tensed when I moved to face him, when only a slender space of air remained between us. Rain began to tap on the window panes. The night felt heavy and swollen with the storm. The shadows gathered knee-deep in the corners of the library. So, like, she is really good at setting the scene, and she doesn't even do it, like, in the highly distracting way. And one thing I really liked was utilizing the slender space of air, because you know what slender is usually used to describe as, and using that in this automatically gives you that kind of feeling. So she's definitely really good at, like, prose. But now for the long one that kind of describes, what was it? My theory of the museum or, like, shop thing, and then what other people said about immersive and fairy tale-esque. So they're packing and leaving, and that's what it starts with. Pack what you need for the divination, he said. Relieved that he believed me capable, I walked to his desk. A detailed map of Hereswith was spread over the wood, river rocks pinning down the four corners. It was a map I had memorized with its crooked, winding streets. Above the desk, shelves lined the walls, burdened with leather-bound spellbooks, stacks of paper, jars brimming with crushed flowers and salt crystals and swan quills, ornate inkpots, cast iron spoons with jewels embedded in the handles, silver bowls nestled into each other, a potted fern whose wilting leaves dangled like unrequited love. I miss that. The other times I miss it. I love it. I gathered what I needed, a bowl that shone like a full moon, pink salt, dried gardenias, a spoon with an emerald chip, a pitcher full of water. Interesting, especially after the plant thing. Anyway, a swan quill. Didn't we already do that? A swan quill. Yeah, we did. Huh. A silver inkwell. That was crafted as an octopus. Its tentacles holding a vial of walnut ink. I charmed them all beneath my breath with a shrinking cantrip. A spell my mother had taught me until the objects could sit cradled in my palm, and I slipped them into my pocket where the remedies waited. The objects clinked like musical notes when they met, weightless as air. That was hard to read. And it's not necessarily a knock against the writing. I'm just really bad at reading out loud. There's still some other good quotes. But essentially you kind of get the purpose, and I don't know why I picked so many quotes. Okay, so next is just, I'll be judging each cover, and you'll see the cover I'm talking about somewhere here in the thing. So the first one I'm talking about is the one that I have is, actually I'll just show you this one. This one is the most atmospheric and probably the best out of all the options we've been given. We got the mirror, the book of dreams, the main character, and whispers of magic and shrouds of mystery. Everything this book promises it will be. While I don't think it reached the potential it could have achieved, we still do get glimpses of that, and which is why I think it's actually the best cover for it. This next one looks to be like the Spanish one, and this one is far too witchy, which sounds weird because it's highly advertised as being about magic and dreams, and some topics witches would find fun to read about. However, I honestly think it would cause for more disappointment because it doesn't go into any of that, and it's not really about, like, witchcraft, it's about just fantasy magic, even though it does use some, like, witchy elements. So, gorgeous cover, but not right for the book. The next one, I feel like came in like an owl crate or fairy loot type box because I saw reviews of people who had that box and didn't like this one. So this one definitely gives off fairy tale vibes, which honestly suits the actual contents of the book. I'm gonna say it. I'm sorry, again. So this one definitely gives off fairy tale vibes, which honestly suits the actual contents of the book most because fairy tales don't go that deep into the workings of things. I poured through this to try and get rid of all the kind of judgy phrases, but some of them remained. Okay. It promised a lighter read meant for simple enjoyment like fairy tales have commonly been used for. However, I still wouldn't say it's an ideal cover for it. It's still pretty, but not as good as the other two, and the colors don't really add up. I don't know. Like, it works for other things, but just not this. It's a bit cluttery. Anyway, I'm not judging. I'm not actually here to talk about the covers. So this isn't just because I'm an artist and I like thinking critically about pretty much anything. But what this does is it presents different paths I could go down to make the revisions I am planning to make. So I have the option to keep it as close to the original as possible, which is best captured by the first option. I have the option to lean more into the witchy vibes of the second option, or more into the fairy tale vibes of the third, or I can be crazy and try to get a good mix of all three. In order to decide, my next step is writing out what each path will need. Some of these will be easier than others. So if I were pretending to be the author's developmental editor, I'd pretend she wants this as close to the original as possible, which would fall more under substantive editing and content editing, essentially fixing up the execution with the occasional developmental edit suggestion to add some sprinkles and flavor to it, which is honestly kind of all it probably would really need to just be improved enough to not have the complaints it has. But that's not the point of this video. So if I were to go the witchy route, that would require more research into witchcraft, which would carry out a risk since people would expect proper representation while also having a different take on the practices. Out of all the options, so it would take the most time out of all of the options, but would add the depth we were promised. Since there's a use of cards in the book, I will say that tarot cards help with self-reflection, and that would be what I heavily lean on, especially since they're already there, as well as shadow selves. And while I don't ever give a reason for why mages don't have shadows, because that's a thing, that is something that could be touched on. It's just something I didn't feel the need to develop. If I were to go the fairy tales route, there would just be more snippets of legends and dramatizations of what people think of it. A core plot point could, because again, there could be so many different ways to do this, could be all the different interpretations of the events and getting to the root of all the fairy tales about it. Maybe there's a mysterious author out there who is selling books off the legends, but clearly you can probably see why this is not a route I will go down, because it's essentially requires a complete overhaul of the story. And depending on the person, could take more time than the research on witchcraft. Because again, you're redoing the whole story. Or maybe you don't have to, but to me it seems like you would have to. Okay, so it's time for these summaries. This book is split into 3 different parts, and part 1 is Magic of Old. So, I have the first 2 chapters labeled exposition, and they're about 20 pages long, as kind of all of them are. There's a few under, a few over, but in general, a chapter is about 10 pages, but I group them together, So Clem works for Mazarine, explains magic system, and reveals Clem wants to learn a specific kind of magic. Foreshadowing secrets that will be revealed, Mazarine lets Clem see that she is in fact a troll from the cursed mountain duchy. And there's two things I want to read from this. The first is kind of the first half of the first sentence. So September's new moon waited for the sun to set. I want to say some good things about this book too. And that is a really good start to the chapter, because we get the time of year, which automatically helps us visualize kind of what kind of scenery we're going to get. We get the new moon, so September's new moon, so we know there's going to be a nightmare tonight, and then waited for the sun to set. So it's almost nighttime, which love it. But then we get to the end. Okay. I learned a vital lesson from Mazarine that day, one that made me vow that I would never trust appearances alone. It's kind of played on later, but at the same time, it's kind of not. It's just another one of those depth promise things. But again, there is another, upon the reread, if you ever read this book after reading it, she asked this question, Mazarine asked this to Clem, because Clem paints a lot of portraits of Mazarine, and this is just the most recent one. And Mazarine asks, do I look the same as I did the last time you drew me? And we learn later that the more you struggle with it, the more you're a kind of stone heart that she's going to get starts cracking, you'll start to morph back into the appearance you had previously. So you'll be getting both kind of appearances in one person as you transition out of the stone heart. And especially since Mazarine clearly has a soft spot for Clem, that could be something she was worried about. But more on that later. It's just, again, I wanted to point out good stuff. So she does have stuff thrown in, intricacies thrown in, stuff on the reread where you'll be oh yeah, but again, it's just, again, not, yeah. We get it. Okay. So Chapter 2 is Clem asking questions back home. Readers are told about the legend, which essentially happened 100 years ago. Her dad is sick, so Clem has to go record a nightmare. And I think this is, like, she learns about divination for the first time. Like, this will be her first time needing to divine a dream for somebody. Because, regarding her age, it's, while she has been working with her father, I don't remember how long, if they mentioned the length. But anyway, the next 2 chapters, 3 and 4, I labeled as introduction, because that's when we're introduced to the mages. So, chapter 3, visiting a child dreamer who got a nightmare from playing a tarot card game and lost. Again, it's not tarot, it's called the Wraith card game. It's a scary, realistic knight appears in her nightmare. And Clem tells the girl's father to make extra safety precautions since she thinks the girl's dream will be the one to manifest. I'm not going to get into that right now. Okay. 2 magicians come to town, which gets the town talking since they all know it means they'll challenge Clem and her father for control of town. Clem intercepts them and brings them to her family's house. She tells her father about it while they get ready to meet for dinner. And for some reason, Clem wears a really nice dress that she will also be fighting in. 5 and 6 incident. Dinner with the mages. Clem shows poor table manners as a way to show her disapproval and disrespect of these mages. Challenge is accepted by her father, even though he is sick, so it's up to Clem, and he warns her not to underestimate the mages. Facing the night, and then the next one is facing the nightmare and failing because she underestimated the mages. And it's not just underestimating the mages; it's also just like not being proactive at all. However, she also notices that the scary knight from the girl's dream was there, despite not being part of the nightmare, and he left a mark behind that she recognizes from the girl's dream. So he drags his sword across like the gravel, and that's what she saw. Okay. So Fallout, chapter 7 and 8. Chapter 7. Clem and Fam have to pick up and leave no trace of themselves, or else they can be summoned against their will. She talks to the visitors and has choice words for Phelan, one of the mages. I don't think I gave names. And it's also the love interest mage. When they see each other briefly. Also, he will help her pick up some art pages that blew away. When given the Book of Nightmares, I think Lennox is the one that holds it, the 2 brothers did not expect the tome of nightmare records for such a small town to be so heavy. Okay, chapter 8. Leaving town on the road, story of the cursed duchy and why it was cursed. Most of the chapter is dedicated to this. Clem realizes they're going to her mother's house in a larger town. And then chapters 9, 10, and 11 are I labeled as decision, and even though they're 3 chapters, they're about 20 pages long. So chapter 9, they arrive to tell their mother what happened. Mildly mention attempts at adjusting to new life. Father refuses to challenge other mages to get territory. We get a little bit about magic and the difference between her father's and her mother's. Clem is pissed at the 2 mages for their audacity and at herself for losing to them. And then she ends up going to an art shop and meeting the mother of the 2 magicians as she's like leaving. Chapter 10, Imani suggests art classes for Clem or going to university. Her father already found a job as like a miner, I think, and she needs to be kept busy. She sees a newspaper article of Phelan looking for an apprentice. She will return to Hearswith with Imani under the guise of like Imani's visiting somebody. Makes a deal with Mazarine to change her appearance. She gives up her art ability and is now like half her heart is stone. And then marvels that Mazarine was alive before the duchy fell. Don't know why I added that last part. Anyway. The next chapter is just her waking up changed, buries her art, and shows Imani her disguise. So like she physically like buries her art in the ground. Like she has like a pouch of art supplies and pictures and stuff that she buries. So these next 2 parts are going to be longer than that one. Because these have the most details that I'm going to be like using and like utilizing. So part 2 is Heart of Stone. Chapters 12 and 13 I labeled as reintroduction. It's, re-meeting the brothers, or one of them. So Clem does interview to become Phelan's apprentice, does something unique, aka attacks him. More on that later. So is offered a position. But Clem is hit with the fact that she may not want to follow through, but he invites her to dinner to help her make up for her mind. She goes to dinner and meets his workers, gets a tour, learns a bit about Phelan's history. Not a lot, though. Brings up lore she learned earlier. We learn about madcaps, those who want to break the curse. I think. Part of me feels like that was in conversation with the friends. Anyway, Already her stone heart starts failing, and she accepts the position. Which, again, more on this later, but it wasn't executed well in the book. So chapters 14 and 15 is motion, because she's, putting her plans in motion more. Clem reveals her disguise and plan to her parents. Her dad gives her advice and conditions and wants to be kept informed. She is told to take her dreamless remedy, and she's all smart because it would suck if that revealed me. Okay, anyway. Her first day working with Phelan reads one of Phelan's citizen dream entries. His mother, just like her father, always makes him drink the dreamless remedy so neither of them have had a dream their whole life. That would be... Anyway. She meets two of his friends who are also wardens, and they tease that Phelan is a madcap. However, if someone were to break the curse, a lot of magicians would be out of a job. Clem returns home, having a potential tracker Phelan gave her behind. Leaving a potential tracker. So he's essentially trying to figure out where she lives, and she keeps, finding ways to not do that. So chapters 16, 17, 18, and 19 are all about the mystery. Okay. I have it twice. Okay. So Clem has to collect the Duke's dream. Clem suspects he's lying about the dream, that he hasn't dreamt it, and he's just making it up. So Duke of Endelia, not the cruel Duke from the previous. The Duke claims to care about Phelan and wants to know what wounded him a previous new moon. Clem senses him coercing her, potentially involving her in a game played by nobles. So essentially court intrigue, kind of. Clem plays the Wraith game with kid servant from Phelan's house. His name is Deacon. She realizes she can't just wait around for dirt on the family to find her. She needs to dig for it and tries piecing things together, but is interrupted. Clem realizes the cards to play the Wraith game are special and thinks Mazarine is one of the Wraiths depicted on the cards. The servants leave her and insist she spends the night, so she snoops until Phelan comes home. So he left for something. Don't remember what. Okay, and then chapter 18. The next morning, Clem has breakfast with Phelan, who worries about where she may live and how she is late for work every morning and offers to let her stay at his place. He's got a spare room. They discover the kid servant, Deacon, was eavesdropping yet again. Phelan's brother, Lennox, comes to the house, and she eavesdrops on their conversation with the kid because he catches her while she's doing it, and she's like, oh, we're playing a game. Shh. And, Deacon loves to eavesdrop, so he's cool with it. So, and then they find out, they're talking about how they can't find Clem and her family anywhere. So they're looking for Clem and her family. Clem goes to visit her parents and receives warning advice, probably from her father. It could be Imini. Checks in with her father, reveals she knows Mazarine is a Wraith and he's hiding something. Phelan reveals he has a way to summon Clem through one of her charcoal drawings he found in the village, likely stole from her when they bumped into each other. But I think in the scene he will say that he found it. It's like when her papers blew away. After the fact, after she already left, he found it in a bush or something. Because he's too perfect to have done anything else. So she encourages him to summon her now so she won't be exposed, and the summoning fails and she's right there and can resist it because she's expecting it to happen. Chapters 20-21 is action because that has to do with the new moon. So tonight will be their first new moon together, so Phelan gives her breakfast in bed and spars with her. Clem is on a walk when she runs into Phelan's two friends and learns they are wondering how Phelan got wounded on his first night as well. She has to reharden her heart because Phelan and his servants are wearing it down. She has dinner and friends, I think. She has dinner with Phelan and they get ready for the nightmare. And then, 21, Phelan reveals he is not supposed to be here or be a mage because he wasn't born with illumination or magical flame, just the gift, essentially. And it took him many grueling years to learn. So they defeat the nightmare, but then the night Clem saw in the first dream, she collected it in the story and learns that Phelan has faced him before. They don't win, but they survive or injured. They don't win. So they solve the dream, but there's another one there? The night isn't part of the dream? Don't remember, but yeah. See, it's better if you read it, but I'm just saying this in case you refuse to. Next is Aftermath, 22 and 23. 22. Clem tends to both of their injuries. They bond, flirt, and sleep in the same bed. not much else really happens. It's just bonding. And then next one, Clem wakes to Phelan's mother, who will take care of him from here. It's kind of awkward. She returns home and talks to Imini, who warns her away from Phelan's mother. She returns to Phelan's house, and he reveals he's going away for about a week, and she needs to do a few things while he's gone. Very, very riveting stuff. Okay. It's portrayed better in the book. Okay. So, 24 and 25, I have his planning. The Duke comes for a visit while Phelan's gone, and she tells him about the night. He tells her about his relationship to Phelan and tells her that someone needs to be creating a doorway for the night to be able to appear and control the nightmares. Control the nightmares, huh? And to remove the helm, and tells them they need to remove his helm so they can see who he is, and tells her about a smith to give them an enchanted weapon like shield combo that will work on the night. She takes note of everything she's learned and learns that Phelan and his mother are both looking for Clem separately, and they know she's in the city. It's funny because I read this book twice and I'm still... Okay. So the Duke comes for a visit while Phelan's gone and tells him about the night. He tells her about his relationship to Phelan. Oh. Well, that's the same thing twice. Oh well. Doesn't have to be perfect. Chapters 26 and 27, Reignited. I'm just going to stop saying the chapters because I don't even know if it's the right chapters anymore. So the next morning, Phelan leaves to tend to a few things and gives Clem the day off. So she goes to see Imini, and she tells her something significant Clem had learned earlier about a specific date that I think that the dinner, right now they probably got this dinner invite that had a specific date on it, and then Imini reveals it's a specific date of when the duchy was cursed in the legend. So she also learns that her dad is lying to her about something. That night she forgoes the remedy and still doesn't dream. I feel like I might have mixed some of this up. Anyway, so their shields are delivered. Phelan finds out. Does she do that? Because I feel like the first time was her and Phelan together. It might have happened twice. I don't remember. I've read a lot of books since then. Their shields are delivered. Phelan finds out Clem talked to the Duke. Phelan asks Clem to go to his mother's dinner party with him, which is on the specific date she's learned about. Oh, so it's vice versa. She learns about the date and then about the dinner. Okay. So a few nights before the party, Phelan returns home from his mother and starts trashing the library. He visits her at night, as she has done to him several times, to apologize for his outburst and trying to tell her to leave, and leaves. So as I was writing this, I had the book in front of me, so it's probably right. I just don't really remember it as much. I've been focusing too much on my other version. Okay, so the next stuff is second new moon together. There's some flirtatious and tension-filled moments. It's tight, but Clem manages to get the helm off the knight and sees her father's face while he's strangling her. Clem calls out to him, and he lets her go, then disappears. Phelan tends to her and finds a scar he knows Clem had gotten when they first met. And then they have a fight. I don't know why I didn't include that. And then she ends up confronting her father. Oh, I know why. Because it happened in different chapters. So Phelan tends to her wounds and finds a scar he knows Clem had gotten when they first met. He doesn't actually reveal her yet. And then she ends up confronting her father. It's just one of those, he finds it and she's oh no, don't touch or don't look, or just pulls it away and distracts him with something. So the next chapter is when she returns to Phelan's house. He tricks her into revealing herself via mirror because, I don't think I mentioned this before, but in mirrors it shows her true self, not her fake self. So, and then they get into a fight until Phelan leaves. Afterwards, Clem dresses for the dinner party that night. Something comes in the mail. She gets a letter from the Duke asking her to divulge who the knight is. Clem meets with Phelan's two friends and secures a ride to the dinner party. The Duke asks if the knight looked like a man at the party, who turns out to be her dad, and realizes Imini and her mother are there as well, as is Phelan, and Phelan's two friends, and one of their fathers. Clem accuses the smith who made the enchanted weapon and shield. Clem accuses Phelan of inviting the people closest to her to enact some kind of revenge on her. Don't remember that, but I guess it happened. Then when dinner starts, Mazarine and Lennox arrive, and all of the adult guests are stabbed Like, they're at the dinner table, and then there is a little lead up to it, though. And they should die, but don't, which is when they reveal that they are all the wraiths from the legend, and it's time to break the curse. And that's what Phelan's mother was after the whole time. The Duke and the mother worked together a lot, but I don't think the Duke was part of it. I mean, he might have been. Again, it's been a while. Okay, so next is part 3, Mountain of Dreams. Opens at the foot of a mountain where the cursed Saren fortress is. Or duchy, I guess I should say. Clem learns from Phelan's mother that her father has a twin brother, and the smith who made her shields to combat the knight also made the knight's armor. With Phelan's 2 friends, she has to figure out who represents who in the wraith's deck, and the doors of the fortress will open to them since all of the wraiths are together, and that's what was required for the doors to open, it says. So I don't even know why, like, there were madcaps going to the mountain to try to break in, even though they knew. Did they know? I don't remember. Anyway, and Phelan's mother reveals the knight was only attacking Phelan to prompt her to act, and Phelan is still keeping her identity a secret. Next is Clem recalls what she said to her father about being vile and deceptive, ends up going to visit her parents and learn some things about how someone will need to become the new Duke/Duchess for the curse to break fully, and all the Wraith's children are there because they all have a claim to the throne. Then when she leaves, she runs into Phelan's mother, who makes Clem swear as Anna, because she's been Anna this whole time after she disguised herself, that she would pledge herself to Lady Raven / Phelan. And Clem knows it won't work since it's not her name used. So it's kind of like this binding thing, or maybe it's just a legal thing, but yeah. And her mother tells her not to trust in the mother. So Lady Ravan tells her not to trust Clem's father. Because again, she doesn't know she's Clem. She thinks it's Anna. So the party goes to the fortress's doors and explore it, and tensions are shown. Everyone wants to have the upper hand, but to succeed in some areas. Oh yeah, there's a lot of like power balance stuff going on. They split up for a little while, and Clem suspects that the Endelian Duke, so not the cruel Duke, because he's dead, doesn't truly want to end the curse. They meet the knight, who is her father's twin, named Emerus, and he tells them the rules needed to break the curse. Basically, they have to defeat one of their nightmares before the day comes. There is no immortality, which is what the race had this whole time, and once the dream is defeated, someone can claim the throne. Does not necessarily mean it's the person who defeated the dream, which, yeah. Nope, don't say it. They get it by now. Okay, so Clem chooses a bedchamber, falls asleep, and has a symbolic dream of having to choose to hold on to the secret she holds, her disguise, or let it fall away, and then she sees someone making armor and a pool of blood. She asks who it is, and the dream ends. She finds Imini wrote her a note. Clem's nightmare is the one that they have to defeat, and she manages to go after it alone, despite Phelan asking for her to let him come with. She confronts a nightmare version of herself, but Phelan's brother Lennox gets in the way, and the curse is not broken. Then Clem goes to Olivette's room and talks to her and Nira. The smith interrupts and wants to talk to Clem and confirms he was the one who made... Oh, I think in the dream, like, he was portrayed as kind of the villain, and he wants to kind of like check on her or something. The smith interrupts and wants to talk to Clem and confirms he was the one who made the armor the knight used to kill the Duke, and the one he's been wearing. But it made the wearer too slow, so they didn't end up using it. And Emerus was the one chosen to kill the Duke. Again, some things just aren't adding up. Then her and Phelan discuss her disguise and their relationship, and they kiss, and he helps her with her wounds, and she tells him to leave because he's breaking her stone heart. He's more like cracking. So this part 3 I did write recently after skimming through the book, so it's accurate. It's just, again, some of the stuff mentioned doesn't add up a whole lot compared to what it should be. Anyway, Clem receives another note from Imini that gets her to spy on the Endelian Duke. She will reveal herself and ask if he wants nightmares to end, to which he'll reply he does, but also asks if Clem does. She will then... it's a lot of back and forth, suspicion, questions, stuff like that. So she will then ask who he supports to inherit the land, and tries to convince him to support Phelan and relinquish him as his heir for Endelion, and makes him suspicious of the Countess. So she's like pitting them against each other because they're trying to pit her against each other as well. So they all gather in the main hall to wait for the nightmare that will come. The one that comes this night is Phelan's mother. It involves the Duke of Saren, who will show everyone who she's killed or plans to kill, and one of them is Clem. Lennox interrupts the dream and goes after the dream Clem, since killing her is how to defeat the dream. Clem beats him and their mother. The dream Clem beats him and their mother. Phelan has to do it, but he can't. So Clem saves him and faces herself. Dream Clem will only concede to the real Clem, is what the dream Clem says. But someone comes up behind her and knocks her out. It was a weird scene. There's another one that gets kind of weirder. Okay. 39, 40, and 41. When she wakes, Phelan is there and he tells her she's starting to look like she used to. They talk about how much he knew about his mother's desire to kill her. Phelan's mom interrupts and wants to talk to Clem alone and tells her the Duke tried to poison her. And the Duke of Endelion. The Duke of Endelion doesn't want the Saren Duchy to be reinstated. This is said 3 or 4 times. And wants Clem to poison Mazarine since she knows the troll has disguise magic the Duke is also using, and killing Mazarine means killing the Duke. Oh, that's right. Phelan's mom interrupts. Again, I'm tired. So she's talking to Phelan's mom about this, and she wants her to kill the Duke. Okay, I'm back on track. So Clem goes to visit Mazarine and tells her the Countess wants to poison her. Mazarine is impressed with how it's a quote. How she uses her guise to the greatest advantage. She finds herself in a dangerous game to secure a new sovereign. I hope that's not what it was actually said. I might have butchered it. So Clem asks Mazarine if the Duke of Endelion and Mazarine... Clem asks Mazarine if the Duke of Endelion... I'm just going to skip that. Probably not important. Mazarine will reveal that she supports Clem's claim to the throne. When Clem asks who knocked her out, Mazarine says she doesn't know, but the Smith/Olivette's father is loyal to Phelan's mom. Clem ends up talking to Emrys/ the Knight, and he explains why he was attacking mages on the new moon. And Emrys asks her to have compassion for him since he was the one bearing the curse. After telling him off and going to her room, she will find a note that says, "Do not trust your eyes alone," from Imini. Again, it's just... not getting into that again. Okay. So they arrive in the main hall again and wait for the next dream. It's one about the twin brothers from the curse, Emrys and Clem's father, Ambrose. It switches to Emrys killing the Duke of Saren, then to the court fleeing as the curse is coming down, then of Ambrose, Clem's father, holding her as a baby before Clem's real father kills the dream baby, only it's not Clem's father, it's Emrys using a disguise. And her father is pretending to be Emrys. Then Emrys dies via crossbow bolt, and Clem realizes she's got the two brothers switched in the legend, and Emrys didn't kill the Duke or Saren, her father did, dressed as Emrys. And Emrys realized the Countess would try to kill her father, so that's why they switched. But her father thought it was for some other reason. That he would be protecting Emrys this time. Is this a scene where, essentially everybody's got a crossbow and they're shooting it at each other? Oh well. And the chapters 42, 43, 44. Clem feels betrayed. She's the daughter of a killer and betrayer. Never mind that he killed, an evil duke. What's so bad about that? I can't remember if it's said they willingly did the switch when her father killed the Duke of Saren dressed as Emrys or not. Clem, I don't think it was mentioned. Clem doesn't get time to process since the Countess is on her way to the dais. But then Mazarine shoots the Countess in the leg with a crossbow. Does everybody have a crossbow? Or are they all using the same one? I don't know. But it's probably not bad. It's just I find it funny that literally everything that happens here is because of a crossbow. Mazarine stands guard by the throne and reveals Clem's disguise to everyone by just saying her name. Clem tells Phelan she wants him to do it, and he ends up agreeing so long as she is by his side. But then the Duke of Endelion, Master of Coin, that's what he is as a wraith, comes and is going to shoot Phelan before he can sit, but Clem jumps in the way. Phelan will take her, and with her in his arms will sit on the throne. Her stone heart crumbles, and she falls unconscious. Clem wakes up to Mazarine, who informs Clem that since she and Phelan sat on the throne together, she's the Duchess and him the Duke. They are bound by magic of their own making Again, it's not bad. It's just betrayal. Clem talks to her parents and asks for their help in leading and promises they will help. That is not at all what the sentence said. It was way more confusing than that. Then it's Nura and Olivette's turn, and Clem has to apologize for the lies. Then Phelan's next, and he gives Clem a present, and they talk about what they dream by day. And the present is like sketch paper and charcoal. Oh. Signy, you have it down here. Clem opens the present, and it's charcoal and paper. She looks into the mirror and draws a picture of herself, but it's not a true reflection of herself. The truest reflection of herself will always shine brightly upon a mirror. I think this is like the quote of the book. Perhaps one day I would draw what was reflected. Perhaps one day I'd be ready to acknowledge what truly dwelled on the other side of the glass. What I was becoming. But it was not that day, and I closed my sketchbook with a snap. I rose and turned away from the mirror. Is that the last line? I think it is. It just doesn't sound epic because I also didn't really make it sound epic. Oh. I have a judgment on that too. Okay. Yeah, that's the end. So it's hinting that she's going to be getting her art back. She just needs to work at it. And something about the mirror, which, yeah. And reflections and who you, I don't know. I don't know. Okay. So with that done, I'm glad that's over. You probably are too, but if you weren't reading it, you had to kind of see what the plot was beforehand. So I've separated this into kind of going through the developmental aspects first, that I'm going to be like deciding whether or not I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to show two different paths to take. Okay. So warden partnerships. In this revision, there always needs to be two because the nightmares are more dangerous. And it's more than just master and apprentice, they have to be a team too. So figuring out dynamics of who is responsible for what, like solving or protecting, can be hard to get used to. And to find the right person to complement you is hard. So maybe there was an initial attempt for one of the brothers to become Clem's father's apprentice, or at least it was an option that was shut down and Clem chosen, so they come back to take it from them. This makes more sense to me because it would be easier for the brothers to keep track of the Madigans if they were still in town. So like they plan to replace and then to still like have them be there. Might not work exactly like that. There might be some like kind of mental gymnastics you have to do to portray it right. And I utilized the term mental gymnastics a little wrong. It's probably likely, but I just didn't think of it. But doing this could mean that the last apprentice died and needed to be replaced. So there'll be more on that later. Doing it like this could also introduce more information about how the system and politics work. Because again, we're just shown a lot of things, but we're not like shown things in action or in depth, which this book promises depth. So, madcaps, which is the people who want to try to solve the curse, and for wanting to solve the curse, they're essentially mad, I guess. So an alternative option is for the brothers to pretend to be madcaps to get a lay of the land before outright challenging the family. Again, since the nightmares would be more dangerous, it is smarter than just showing up out of the blue and demanding it, or issuing the challenge. This, as well as the partnership option, would provide for more interaction between Clem and the brothers before the betrayal, which would make it more personal and potentially complicate relationships. Like, maybe she was into Lennox at the beginning, meanwhile Phelan doesn't approve of her potentially wanting to help solve the mystery or whatever is going to be happening there. And so, he seems like just a big jerk. Mr. Darcy. And whether or not anything happened between them, like if it was just flirting or if more happened, that would feed into their dynamics later. The relationship thing is less likely to happen with the partnership thing. But the partnership would introduce early rivalry and provide more scenes for magical dueling and exploration. So in my old video, I had the idea of the brothers showing up twice to show their audacity and lack of disrespect. I'm going to be using that word a lot, I guess, audacity. It's a word I like. But honestly, with the more dangerous nightmares thing, it would not work out and pales in comparison to what these new two options could provide. It could, however, be mixed into the partnership plot, depending on how you go about it. But it's probably just not going to, since it would only serve to complicate things and over-lengthen things. This book is already going to be longer with my version than it is now. Since both the partnership plot and the madcap plot are really good ones, the determining factor will be how many other opportunities we have to relay the same/similar information if they aren't chosen, and how the new dynamics, it's really small, will influence character and plot development. Both have potential to add a lot, but one would involve a more personal betrayal, and one would have to do with good old outrage, which is the closest to the original work. However, a big complaint was the lack of fleshed out characters, and Clem getting to know and like Lennox more than Phelan initially could prove more interesting down the road. So you can definitely see, again, completely different books, or at least mostly different books, depending on what kind of aspects you want to focus on. So next is the dream tax, because there is that for the wardens. They can charge a dream tax for kind of serving. So the next one is a dream tax. There's a dream tax of wardens of their my sentences do not make sense when said out loud. So the next topic is on the dream tax. Wardens can issue this for their territories. You know how taxes work. It looks like they get to decide how much they can charge. It's possible professional schooling could play a part, and those who can charge higher are seen of as better wardens. They typically already come with rich families. However, they have to pay their own dues for their education too. While this isn't a necessary change, it could complicate Clem's view of Phelan and Lennox more as well. Especially for Phelan, since he needed extra help from the Duke himself and wants to pay it off so he's no longer indebted to the Duke. And he doesn't want to be his heir and all that. So Lennox could also suffer from this. Trying to pose even the smallest of taxes would cause an uproar in Hearsworth, because Clem and her father did not do that. So what this could do is maybe the villagers don't come forward with their dreams and scare off potential apprentices. Because again, since there's more of a thing of you needing to, immediately the brothers, once they split up, will be looking for apprentices or partners. So, but then the villagers pay for it when it means Lennox cannot solve the new moon nightmares on his own, which may not work logically depending on many things. So you'd have to find ways to make it work, because you'd think most people would understand that no matter how much they don't like the warden they have, they don't have really much of a choice. Anyway, another thing is the fact that since Ambrose didn't charge much tax, when they're replaced to be the brothers, they don't really have a safety net outside of moving in with Clem's mom. So it's more than just stealing the territory. They don't have anything to fall back on. So they essentially made them homeless, And since the brothers are rich already and potentially use it to gain advantages and cheat, it's extra insulting. So like what I said about like richer wardens and the dream tax, you can afford like nicer materials, which is probably what the brothers would show up as having. So like they're over prepared, and then there's Clem and her father, who kind of have like hinky dinky type. Don't know where that phrase came from, but hinky dinky type stuff. Is that a thing? Sorry, I gotta interrupt this. Hinky. It's a supermarket chain. Never heard of it before. At least it's not something weird. Okay. That's better than what... Okay. Again, I got into it. I keep forgetting what I mentioned. So this would also offer for more development into a warden's gear. It makes no sense for a warden's uniform to be a dress. A warden would need armor. So the status/richness of a warden could be shown by how extravagant their armor. Or I like this one kind of better. Maybe it's for like lesser mages or wardens. So maybe they have some insignia or brooch-like thing that offers magical armor that needs to be charged, and if it isn't charged for the new moon, that could cause issues, especially since the dreams are now more dangerous and harder to solve. It might overcomplicate things, but it's interesting for sure. Next is a side-by-side outline till we get to the end of part 1. I'll include other developmental aspects along the way, and again, there are still so many ways I can take each route. These are just the ones I'm focusing on. So I'll be doing the partnership first. The 2 main routes I can take with the partnership plot, and I guess the madcap plot too, but more with the partnership plot, is the way it could be presented, since it will add a lot more, which would lead to bloat unless it's interesting enough to stand on its own as an introductory sequence. Either, like, it could be like just a prologue, I don't know, as in like a prologue of the brothers coming and then being angry about it or something, I don't know. So there's either linearly, I can't pronounce words well, telling it, or telling it via mentions and flashback sequences. I'm not going to go as far to say which one would be better, because it depends on the execution of both and how different the rest of the story would be because of them. And if they would, what would fit most with the new version, you know. So let's say a few months to a year pass after the brother or one of them, likely Lennox, because again, that's what happened in the book, tried to become Ambrose's apprentice after his old apprentice's death, because yeah, I'm using that. Which could lead to Clem rightly or wrongly thinking the family had to do with said deaths. Or the fact that he went missing, which could help fuel her wanting to expose the family and get justice. So again, we have more reason to back Clem in her decisions, which will come back to, you know, haunt them. So after losing to Clem, they'd return to a duel, which, despite them not challenging Ambrose for the position twice, can still offer... Okay, hopefully, I'm gonna test something out quick. So let's say a few months to a year pass after the brothers or one of them, likely Lennox, because again, that's the most similar to the original, tried to become Ambrose's apprentice after his old apprentice's death or disappearance, which could lead to Clem rightly or wrongly thinking the family had to do with said death, which could fuel her wanting to expose the family and get justice. So after losing to Clem, they'd return to duel, which, despite them not challenging Ambrose for the position twice, can still offer Clem versus Lennox, then team versus team. So, like, we could still kind of incorporate my original idea, but again, depending on how we tell it, it may not be room to actually show it, it would just be mentioned. Since Ambrose was nice enough to give him a chance and advice and all that, even though he may have... So, like, if we're going to be going more into this, we'd have this sequence of essentially Ambrose seeming like he's going to be apprenticing Lennox, or going through the motions of potentially testing Lennox, or like giving him a chance. But I say, even though he may have always chosen Clem, but had to make it look like he was giving Lennox a fair chance, which means Ambrose could have cheated on Clem's behalf, and this will be, apparent later. Again, to make Clem realize her father isn't as nice of a person as she thought. The audacity of the disrespect is still there, especially since he gets sick and Clem thinks they're sabotaging him again. And again, we're just giving more fuel to the fire, you know. And again, not all of the claims are going to be correct. In my mind, the brothers waited so long to improve their abilities, and maybe sent a spy or two in to help gather information for when they do come to challenge for the position. And this person could have been someone Clem liked, but that may overcomplicate things as well. But it also may improve it due to the mystery of how far they went to cheat, which could tie into Phelan's whole thing of not being a born magician, so he has to do stuff like this all the time, but more on that later. So I'm saying it could also be Phelan who is the spy. But, so like, it means that Phelan wouldn't have been there at the beginning, so Phelan wouldn't know they're brothers. And I don't know how right this is, but I feel like I pictured Lennox as like the blonde, curly-haired, and then Phelan as like the darker-haired and kind of like tanner skin, but maybe off. But they can look different enough to not look like brothers, unless you put them together or something. So this would add the chance for more nightmares and duels showcased, and therefore more on how magic works. However, it won't add much complications to Clem's relationship with the brothers, because it'd be, again, really similar to the book. It would pack a punch later when Clem learns what her father did for her. However, it makes Clem not wanting to be a warden / wanting to study different magic more difficult, and presenting that transition of her choosing duty may require this whole section to be longer than presented in the original, which it wasn't presented at all, so I don't know why I put that there. After reading Madcap. Okay, so next is the Madcap path. This one would likely need an equal level of added material as the partnership one, and would face similar problems with deciding the best way to present the storyline, and would add a more personal element to Clem's need for vengeance, as well as it being easier to represent her desire to pursue a different kind of magic. So, like, there is some highs and lows, some similar problems, but also different advantages. I don't know, I feel like I'm repeating it, like I felt like I said that 3 times. Anyway, this one would delve a lot more into the lore of the mountain and also add the most new stuff, because again, it's completely different from the book, and therefore require a lot more work due to other changes it would add along the line. You do have to think about that stuff, especially with probably traditional publishing, because you've got deadlines, which is part of the problem of a lot of books nowadays, which already to me typically means it's a no-go. But if I were the developmental editor of this author, I would still present this to the author. Essentially, Lennox and or Phelan would need to take at least a few weeks off from their positions, if they already had positions. You know, they might not have, but it depends. They would pose as madcaps, or Clem would think they are madcaps, so they'd be pretending to be something else, but she's like, haha, no, I see you. But she's still wrong. So they see madcaps all the time at Here's With, because they're like right next to the cursed duchy, and they will go along with it, and, you know, technically they kind of are anyway, because their whole family is trying to, you know, solve the curse. So, or they could be researchers or writing a book or play or something. At the very least, you know, that's what they insist they are. The reason I'm doing madcap for this is because it is something talked about in the book, and I want Clem to help because she doesn't want to be a warden for the rest of her life. And with the researchers or writing a book or a play, that could tie into like the fairy tale type of thing. Phelan would be against it and distant / short with her from the start, because he's not going to pretend to be her friend and betray her. Lennox, however, would be distracted by his attraction towards her, and or would be thinking when he does beat her and her father, he could just take her on as his apprentice, so it really wouldn't be all that bad. Or Phelan did plan on working with Lennox there, but he'll end up getting fed up and take a position back in Endelion, which may have to do with him finding out how Lennox strung Clem along, or maybe it was just his mother's orders when she realized the Madigans may be in Endelion, because they failed to keep him there. So wanted him there. Maybe the offer of apprenticeship in the newspaper was meant to be a trap of some kind, since they thought the Madigans would try something like that. So this would add the chance for a better representation of the lore, and could get into the various legends and theories regarding the dreams / nightmares, and maybe even like the shadows and stuff. Like all the questions we essentially still have about how the world works, they would be asking or representing. And then maybe the fairy tale like things heard about behind the mountains. Since there are trolls past it, maybe it cuts off more of the continent, which has more of those things, so it's like a more magical land. Now, since it's cut off, a lot of artifacts are rare, since they could only be traded through that pass. We don't really learn where these artifacts are from or anything. Like, you know, like the cool octopus cup and other things, it's just there. And it's just, you know, anyway. So, but this is already deviating and adding a lot, again. So it's my least favorite at the moment, yet still interesting to think about as I'm plotting for / leaning towards choosing the partnership route, since it could leave more for other moments that would go into this stuff. So far, leaning towards partnership. And I'm doing it this way to kind of show you the thought process of me deciding which one to choose. Which is, even though I already know which one I'm choosing, I'm just kind of presenting it like this for your sake. Next is developmental aspects 2, about the challenge / dreams. So I already mentioned the dreams are going to be more dangerous. Here are the elements I need to consider in relation to the plot. Before I get into options, I'm going to reflect on the tone and themes of the original version, and on those cover options I mentioned probably an hour ago, leaning into witchcraft, fairy tales, or a mix of both. With witchcraft, we can get more meaning with the wraith cards, shadows, and shadow selves, and meanings of dreams and all that, to get to the root of how things work. With fairy tales, we wouldn't necessarily need that. It would probably have more to do with the connections between each other and the present to the past, deciding on your own story and not playing the part or accepting the lot you've been given in life. I'm clearly going to try and do both, since they both add depth and can actually work well hand in hand, depending on the route we take. So many ways to do this. Okay. So issuing challenge. So we know the wardens can challenge other wardens for control over their territory. No reason is really given for this that I can remember, nor are there really many rules about such things. I think there are like certain like etiquette things, but not a lot. So there's also the fact that Here's With is the prime place for madcaps, so it makes sense to me that many madcaps would try to challenge for control over the area unless it really seems like it's not worth it. Maybe like at first there was, but then people are like, oh, you know, because that's kind of what the brothers did, is they took it on and they're like, oh, this is not great. So that could be done via the fact that, but it's not done in that exactly like that. I'm thinking again more of my original rewrite. So, okay, anyway. That could be done via the fact that a warden makes next to nothing and are overworked. Because again, here's with people, maybe it's like a tradition that you don't charge a lot for them. Because it would be a lot because they have nightmares all the time. And they're a village. So, and maybe after Ambrose defeated many, maybe most are intimidated by him. So it may not be the nightmares, it may just be him. Which again could feed into like him doing underhanded stuff. So there's also the hostility of the villagers who would side with Ambrose, or whoever was in control. So, but this would be a good place to add more expansion to the workings of things and would work both the partnership and Madcap plotlines. But one thing to hammer out is why this would be allowed. Because again, it's kind of really important, especially with my changes, that the wardens really know the people they are doing. So, but we'd have to keep this if we want to keep it closer to the original. But that is a flaw you'd have to work out. Wraith cards. I have this here because it's highly likely 1 or 2 dreams have to do with the Wraith cards, rather than it being a simple trading game. It would be more like a mix of tarot and like Magic the Gathering, or that, I don't remember the name, I still keep thinking of the name, superhero game where you gotta convince your random person / abilities that like you're given out of a pile are better than another person's. Or to twist a tale with the cards you have, similar to how dreams work based on a person's experiences and objects seen or people met throughout the day. These are all games I have seen. I don't remember the names of them. I could have found it out, but I guess I didn't. So, or I guess it could be more like poker or the game Gloom. Again, there are so many different ways you could take it, but essentially it's like that made game where you're just like picking and trying to like trade, but you have to act trade and people don't have to trade with you. It's not really explained well. So, mixed in with the cards could be other objects or archetypes that are fairy tale-like in nature. They all have deeper meanings and relations to other cards. So, like, imagine if we did it to be, like, kind of some stuff that would be interpretable by dreams. So, like, a tooth could be shown, like, oh, that's anxiety, because, you know, a lot of people, when they have anxiety dreams, it's because they're clenching their teeth, and so they have a dream that, like, their teeth are falling out, or rotting, or something, you know, like, stuff like that. I have a feeling it would be hard for the author to let go of Clem / Enna potentially being bad at the game, because she's so enraptured by the Wraith cards that are meant to be kept secret. And I do kind of like what she did with that too. So, it, you know, we might not be able to save that, but, you know, we could. Potentially. Depending on what we do. Or it could be like a Wraith game that's about like solving a dream, like the key. There's so many different things. I'm not going to decide what I would do with it. Only that there could be something to make it tie into the story and themes better, because I'm not, you know, that dedicated to this. This isn't an actual job or book I'm writing. Recording dreams. This is another good place to add some flavor. We get to experience Elle's dream throughout Clem. No. We get to experience Elle's dream through Clem because the girl couldn't bring herself to say it out loud. It wasn't even that bad. But what if the dreams recorded could also be visited again? What if they experienced it firsthand or could watch it from the sidelines? Like, there's 2 different options to do it. And like, how you do it is also important. There are a lot of cool ways to do this, but ultimately it doesn't matter unless I could think of something that would be a plot point / driving point for the story. Like using nightmares / dream ledgers to train apprentices how to solve dreams. Maybe they can go back to see how other mages solve dreams via some kind of memory crystal or the ledger itself, or like journals of mages. And there could be a deeper reason why this is a thing, or simply a lesson / there are books of wardens writing their experiences of how they defeated the dream. This is what I get for not sticking to the script. Anyway, I say the same thing twice, like back to back. Also, hiding the dream ledgers is important. Since Clem thought it was clever, he charmed it invisible in the middle of the desk rather than hiding it in a secret compartment. Read page 20. I kind of treat that as if it's not as clever, but like if you think about it, think of it like a psychologist or therapist hiding your mental health records from other people, you know. There might be some people who try to, who would use it as kind of like a blackmail maybe, or since their privacy isn't being invaded enough, you want to give them, you know, what they can. So, what a strange day. I glanced at the Book of Nightmares in my arms. It was a tome. The sort that could hold back an ironclad door. I had read only portions of it, and some accounts had made me laugh at their absurdity, while others had actually made me fall asleep, only to wake hours later with my cheek pressed against the caramel-tinged pages. But there were some recordings that made me shiver, dreams influenced by the mountains. They had sparked such fear in my bones that I hadn't slept for a week after reading them. although none of these nightmares belonged to me. No, I studied nightmares, and I confronted them every new moon in the streets of Hereswith when the magic flowed freely from the mountain fortress and dreams were cursed to materialize. But I didn't know what it was like to experience a nightmare, what it felt like to wake frightened from something that felt hauntingly real. As a magician, I chose never to dream. Why did I read that? Come on, past Signy. What was the purpose? It might just be another one of those, this is kind of what was promised versus what we were given. I don't remember. And I don't think it's entirely necessary. So next is solving dreams. There would simply be more to solving dreams. And maybe rather than a single one, there are many, but one key, or a warden has to solve as much as they can, and the nightmares don't disappear until solved, so they might bleed over into like the other nights. So if you're slacking, things get more and more dangerous, and maybe the only solution when things get too out of hand, or there's a super powerful nightmare, is to kill the dreamer. There would be a more psychological aspect to all the dreams, so maybe a reason why challenging the warden is frowned upon is because they wouldn't know the people well enough. If it's multiple dreams, then maybe the mage with the most keys at the end is the winner rather than just a race for the one. Maybe at times it's better to forget the challenge and work together to defeat the dream. Again, I'm not entirely picking which one is going to be trade, because no matter what, it depends on things. So, after going through to try and decide what can make each version better, I found both are equally valid for these same plot points' developmental aspects. So, rather than spell out exactly how the challenge will come to pass, I will focus on the future ramifications associated with the two different paths. I feel like I changed my mind in the next one. No, I didn't. Okay. So, with the partnership plot, we've got the failed apprentice angle, where it was Clem versus Lennox. Now it's Clem and Ambrose taking on Phelan and Lennox. Either this is when Clem meets Phelan, or maybe she learns he was a spy sent to scope out the land. Again, no matter how the challenge is issued, there's a lot of disrespectful and seemingly underhanded stuff going on involved with it. One of which could have to do with the money brothers spent on supplies, and with, deaths, and Ambrose's sickness. Note, 7 magicians had served in Hereswith as wardens before Ambrose, and I don't remember if Ambrose challenged the old warden or graduated into his position after previous warden retired or died or went madcap. Again, that's just another small little tweak that could have been thrown in to just make the book, have more depth. So there's less different ramifications unless Ambrose did cheat on Clem's behalf. All it really does is enhance what we already had. So it's also possible that Lennox could have been sent there by the Warden Training Center / Mage University to be the new partner. So Clem's father could face legal problems if anyone learned of the cheating or other things he did. He doesn't record like Mazarine's dreams and stuff. So supposedly, unless Lennox / the family fabricated it too. So like maybe that's what they claim, and so Clem's father is worried about it, but it's not really what happened. Because again, both sides are cheating, even though Clem doesn't know her father's cheating. So, it is possible to add an element of the romantic angle from the madcap area here as well. Maybe there's a system where wardens in training can train under different wardens and make potential connections / build a resume of recommendations and all that. So Lennox could have trained under Ambrose without them knowing he's going to try and take the position, and maybe it's already filled. Again, with the apprentice who would have died. Then when Lennox graduates, the timing of the other warden's death he tried to replace is suspect, especially with how soon he jumps on the chance to try and become Ambrose's new apprentice, then come to challenge him again. However, that may be adding unnecessary bloat, unless portions of it aren't shown but mentioned. Unless Phelan proves to be a spy and Clem started liking him from afar or something. That could also be a thing. But I feel like people tend to like the more enemies to lovers, and that might go against it a bit. So, but ultimately, I think it really would just overcomplicate things unless execution is spot on, or it turns into a duology, or the author / publisher is cool with this book being as big as Hereswith's Nightmare Ledger is, supposedly. The madcap plot, or ramifications. With the madcap angle, there's too much new possibilities for me to want to spell out since it isn't a real dev edit, but the added ramifications would have to do with Clem going against her dad's advice / request not to help the brothers or associate with them. There can be many reasons she does choose to associate with them. She does live in a small village, and they're good looking, which shouldn't be the whole reason, but could be something she tacks on when reeling after the fact to be like, oh, you only did it because of this. And then Clem would also be feeling guilty because she didn't want to be a warden, but she felt she took it away from her father because, she feels like it's because of her that they won. Or maybe later on she'll realize she got what she wanted, but now she's too angry. Or if the realization happens later, like near the end of the book, she missed out on things she could have done had she not let the anger get the best of her. Again, more details later, because I'm still trying to decide which one I'll be doing, and then I'll be presenting what I'm doing. There are also potential personal/romantic betrayal feelings if she was flirting with/interested in, and actually doing things with Lennox, which could provide fodder for his and falling out because he took it too far. So far, I already said this, but it would add the most complications and differences to the book. However, it does provide for a book into the main love interest and a side character, since both brothers were presented shallowly. Another angle to try and merge both could be Lennox training under Ambrose and wanting to challenge Clem for the apprentice position, and Phelan pretending to be a madcap to collect information since they know they need advantages Ambrose isn't likely to offer. So it's just providing details to this plot potential of merging them. So madcap path would go along with the not relying on your eyes alone thing that is mentioned a few times in the book and in the promotion of the book. But since that was mostly pointing towards the Ambrose Emrys thing, the partnership may be best. Because sometimes trying to adapt one thing to everything isn't as great of an idea. It was mostly pointing towards the Ambrose Emrys thing. And there are other, themes that are explored that could be applied to other things. And so that's why, ultimately at this point I've decided that it's not going to happen. But again, to just show you the thought process. So my options are full partnership or madcap, or one as the forefront plot and the other as the background plot. With the potential romantic plot point and Ambrose cheating being the most important, interesting things of each individual thing. Even though actually partnership has more, which is again, partnership is going to be the forefront. There is no way to portray both equally and make it a palatable book. The details of the alternative options within the path will also be easier to decide on as we get further into the story. Same with how the nightmares work. That depends a great deal on any changes we make to what is causing them and the backstory behind the Duke and how that last part of the story will go on. I will present my favorite idea, but it's also one of the only ideas I thought of. Later on. When is it? I think it's at the end of chapter or part 2. So the third page of developmental aspects. Magic types. I utilize the book's description of these types. Well, the initial description. They might get into it more later. So Avartana is a defensive magic that lent its strength to spars and duels. We often face spells bent by malicious intent, which made for dangerous and unpredictable situations, such as new moon nights. And then there's Devaya, I think it's pronounced, is to take one's skill and create an enchanted object was no simple feat. And I had read of magicians who had devoted decades of their lives to reach such an achievement. And then there's Metamara magic, which transformed and influenced objects. So her dad, I think, does the Avartana. What she practiced that her dad didn't like with the objects was the Metamara. And then what she wanted to do is Devaya. So. Holiday/festival. If you remember from the summary, there was no holiday or festival presented. It was just a dinner party. But I'm going to be including one. So I like the idea of adding something like this to the narrative, so Clem can reflect on the differences between Endelion and Hearswith, but not just in how the celebrations happen. It would also be in how she has nobody to really celebrate with as her family is busy. Her mom is performing at the festival, her father has to work in the mines, or is too tired to celebrate since medieval people had a lot of celebrations to keep the people happy. So it makes more sense that they would have off for the festival, and he's just sleeping in bed. And then Imani is too absorbed in taking care of him, or cleaning or something, or just doesn't want to do anything. It would also show if she can pull herself out of her depression/anger, she could just live a normal life and make friends, and it would be something for her to reflect on later. I know I went on and on about Lennox challenging Clem, but for the sake of brevity, I'm going to say part of what's so disrespectful and insulting is that the brothers challenged Ambrose to replace him, rather than coming to audition to become an apprentice, while also during a period of mourning, because I am going to be using the fact that he had an old apprentice that died or went missing. So Ambrose didn't have any official help. A fledgling mage. He only had a fledgling mage, not university trained. And it's still kind of unofficial. Or maybe by now it is official. It would make more sense if it was official. Anyway, and remember, Clem finds it possible that since her father was sick in the timing of it all, they could have a part to play in the previous apprentice partner's death and the sickness. Because it's possible the partner became madcap. Well, I'll address this later. So whether known or unknown of what happened to him, or at least what Clem thinks she knows, that would be interesting, as this would allow for more in-depth politics of this position. And then the politics are the Mage University teaches all kinds of magic and allows the student to decide on what they want to do with it. So there's no pre-dream warden training outside of simply casting magic. You would get the training by like interning, with a warden or a team of wardens. So this means there's likely to be little physical training involved, unless he gets like an extracurricular. In their last year, maybe there's a chance to apprentice under wardens or to go on field trips to watch them at work. Maybe it's like, one of those school things where they take you, watch how they do this, watch how they do this. These are different paths you can take. So it would be interesting if Ambrose had to go in once or was asked to make a presentation on it, but he denied it. Maybe Clem and her father are too poor to afford it, the education, but she's been saving up. Maybe they initially lived in Endelion, and Clem could have been in Phelan's position if her father allowed it, but he left to keep her away from it. So in Phelan's position, I mean in debt. But her father was like, nope, we gotta get away from there, because he's trying to hide. So next. This is less about aspects and more about how I'm going to be doing the next. I'm going to be splitting up the ideas into chapters, but ultimately that doesn't matter as much. Some chapters could split into 2 or 2 into 1 depending on how the actual writing of the events would go. It's just easier for me to keep track of the story with chapters. I would continue to show both paths, but this is already going to be a long video, so I'm forcing myself to choose one to focus on right now. And then again, I'm choosing partnership because it has less new material. Even though, in practice, Madcap might be better. For this, I'm choosing partnership. So now I'm going to decide on how to execute it. There is a structure of the story to think of first. It is separated into parts: Magic of Old, Heart of Stone, and Mountain of Dreams. We can add parts or simply expand the parts. One we could add is Game of Cards, which is the one I will be adding. Or we could abandon it completely, but I'm not going to do that for this video. Abandon what completely? Anyway, skipping that part. We've already got pretty much all of the keywords for these titles that we have. Another could have to do with a mirror, with art, with legend, lies, shadows, tax. There's Mirror of Lies or Mirror of Shadows, or we can deconstruct the old ones and throw these words back into the mix to kind of reform things. And again, that would change some structures and some themes. I'm also not using things like Knight or Duke, since those are kind of in the Wraith cards, titles talked about in stories. So I would only use them if I could work arcs around them, which, as in each Wraith or each card. I've seen a witch book do that once. What was it called? The Improbable Magic for Cynical Witches. Each chapter has a card explanation, a tarot card explanation, and then the chapter. However, since I'm approaching this as an editor to limit myself, and not as an author who's coming up with this idea on my own, I'm going to keep it as close to the original work as I can. I won't do this for all these videos, but I'm doing it for this one. It's also easier and allows for lots of possibilities to get lost in. I think I've given enough of the process for authors to think about, potentially implement when doing this themselves. That's why I showed the thought process. May have said that a few times already, but I do not have a good memory. So Arc 1, Magic of Old, Chapter 1. When I was first doing this, I thought it would be better to do Elle's dream before Clem paints a portrait for Mazarine. I am still going to choose this because it will show Clem doing the work of collecting the dreams, then we can get into the whys. So we get the action first. And immersion, and then exposition. It would also add Clem's conflict of wanting to study different magic but feeling obligated to help out. I'll give more information on this later. Hope I do. I am not going to decide the best way to give dreams at a depth, only to say that there is some more to it, and it really affects the one collecting / experiencing the nightmare or dream. Just saying right now, it could be cool if some nightmares seemed like they were dreams. So maybe it's easy to, So essentially, I do not explain this well in the sentences. What I mean by this is that to a person who's not experiencing it through the dreamer's emotions and mind, seems like a totally normal, happy dream. But then you get into the person of the mind, and it turns out they're anxious about everything that's happening, or everything is leading to a secret fear of this or that. That's what I'm talking about. And then, so maybe it's easy to miss, and that could come in as part of the story. So after collecting the dream, Clem needs to take a moment to herself before going home to get ready for Mazarine. Oh yeah, and that's why they collect dreams and nightmares, because they've learned they can't really rely which one's which. and maybe held back telling it to someone before it became too much. She was embarrassed. The kids made her like promise not to tell their parents or something. Maybe they'll have nightmares until it's collected. Maybe the mages can replace it with a dream. But again, not getting into it. I just keep having these idea things as I go. All that's important is the dreams are a reflection of life. So it's important. I confused myself because now I'm thinking about what I just said. Okay, backtrack. But remember, Elle's dream was caused by the Wraith card game, and she was terrified and maybe held back telling it to someone before it became too much because she was embarrassed, and the kids promised each other not to tell their parents, or something like that. And maybe, like, these dreamers will have a nightmare until it's collected, and maybe the mages can, like, replace it with the dream. But, I'm not getting into it. I just keep having these little idea bunnies. All that's important is the dreams are a reflection of life, so it's important to know the people's dreams you are recording, so it would be easier to solve/interpret correctly. Think of it similar to therapy in some ways, which adds a whole new, level to this book. It's less about dueling mages and more about therapeutic mages. However, I would also do the kill the dreamer thing, as that could be used on Elle as a reprimand for not telling, and could add a whole new level of invasiveness that makes this position uncomfortable on all angles, because it's not much of a choice to share such personal things and being so vulnerable with someone else, and how much pressure is on the wardens to do their job right and ethically. Chapter 2. That was a lot. Okay. Then we go home, as Clem did after visiting Mazarine in the first version, and get her talking to her dad and, Imini about things, and hinting that Clem isn't entirely used to this yet. She's done a few new moons and maybe helped out during one when she wasn't supposed to, since she's like that. The reveal of the old partner/apprentice's death would be here too, probably. And we'd show Ambrose/Imini not liking that Clem is going to Mazarine's, so we don't need to be told that when she's with Mazarine. We still could be, but we don't need to be. Likely not much different, save for putting in additions and alterations to developmental aspects. Also, her father is still sick. Chapter 3. When Clem goes to Mazarine, not much changes, save for the added information/depth brought on by the changes we're making that also fits the theme or not taking over of lies or disguise/not trusting eyes. Oh, so what I mean by that is we'd be adding more stuff, but we'd still need to have the main theme of lies or disguise, and not trusting eyes. So we don't want to overburden it with too much, info all at once. But we do need to make some alterations to make it fit. Chapter 4. Adding a chapter where Clem goes out into town. She would draw and interact with them, revealing just how well she knows them, maybe even more than they know themselves or each other in some ways. Maybe we also get to see how she likes feeling needed, responsible, and important. Because she doesn't have a whole lot of personal relations outside of, Imini and her father and Mazarine. And because everybody is a client, So there's a connection here. It's idyllic and all that. Then someone comes to say 2 mages have arrived, like in the book. And Clem knows it's for 2 things. They're madcaps looking to break the curse, or they're coming to audition to serve as her father's new apprentice. And maybe a brief mention that it couldn't be to challenge for Ambrose's position due to the reasons we've already discussed previously. I'll go ahead and decide they would be the first of many they were expecting, because again, the timing of it. Ambrose wanted to at least get through the motions of interviewing and testing and pitting Clem against others before choosing her. So he was planning on doing it, he just didn't end up doing it. It could be something he admits to later. Also, Clem will paint a portrait of or draw a picture of Elle, showing her as brave, or for Clem to show her that she isn't mad at her, because, Elle might think she's mad at her for after being scolded like that. Chapter 5. Clem meeting the mages and inviting them to the dinner where they reveal they are challenging for the position rather than applying for one. Maybe Lennox was flirting with her, and she flirted back, before they found out, or she at least found him attractive or something. So we can get a glimpse of the romantic madcap path we could not fit in. Maybe she had seen Lennox or Phelan before, since one of them would have needed to spy to get the lay of the land before challenging, and had weaved into her good graces it could be shown during the town sequence. This could have been mentioned, and whoever it is on her mind occasionally. So when the mages would warn her, they could be like, oh, he's with somebody, or I don't know. Again, you would have to go through the logic of that to find a way to apply it to the new version. Because again, one of the problems was that the stuff happening didn't really feel organic, and if it's not explained properly, it would still feel inorganic. So chapter 6, getting ready for the new moon, where maybe Clem could ask if Ambrose could get legal with it, but he knows it would bring Lady Ravon's and the Duke's Intelligen's gaze upon them, or another reason, he doesn't know who they are, Or maybe he doesn't know who like the brothers are yet. Or, again, he's doing underhand stuff that would bring in an investigation that he doesn't want people to find out about. So many things. But again, it depends on other things. And we're not getting into intricate details. I feel like I'm reminding myself over and over again not to go too deep into this. Chapter 7 and 8. The challenge / race against time. I'm not dictating how the dream sequence will happen, the differences in how they play out, but for the sake of planning the length of the novel and depth of content, more interaction between contestants, I decided to give it a 2-chapter arc instead of just a single one. So chapter 9. Reeling from the loss, saying her goodbyes, because we spent more time in developing the town and her relations with them in the shopping center chapter. This will have a bigger impact and allow us to see and understand more why she feels the way she does. And I say shopping, but it doesn't have to be shopping. She could have just been like out there drawing people or whatever. So when she hands the book over to Lennox or Phelan, the weight of it clearly surprises them, which will play a bigger part if what I want to do will work. So she would be smug about it, but for the villagers' sake, she is forced to hope they're not incompetent. She can't think it would serve them right to fail because what that failure would mean to the people she cared about. So again, it's kind of complicating. There's this whole theme of like she can't feel certain emotions, like with the dreams. Like she has to cut that out with the duty. She has to cut out a lot of personal stuff, and personal relationships because again, there's clients and like people to worry about, and she's young and in this really like kind of like high role in her society. So chapter 10. On the road and hearing the tales of the duchy told by Imini, who doesn't like to talk about it, but she's talking about it now. I don't remember why. So Clem realizes that they're going to her mother's house. I would include some more backstory here about her mother, and if there is little to tell, then find a way to show or emphasize how that emptiness had affected her in life, again with the whole connection issue, how that emptiness was filled by the villagers themselves and the duty she feels towards them. They will arrive at Endelion, and she will see her mother again. There will be more of a reunion and attempts to get to know each other and find similar interests in such things, which we didn't get in the book. Clem also realizes that maybe now she can try pursuing what her dream was, which was learning Devaya magic. And maybe she tries to get over it, but later it'll come back up. This may include involving like another chapter. But anyway. Chapter 11. Clem attempting to live a new life. Oh, it could be here. And introduce it in a similar manner as introducing her life in the village. Only condense it and show just how much she feels like she doesn't belong. And maybe she's going through a phase where art / her dream isn't giving her joy. And she doesn't fit in, hasn't made friends, and maybe never really tried. She was also never able to get over the whole losing everything, but she's still trying to tell herself to get over it. Because she is left alone all the time since her father has found a new job, and it's like a really harsh job, and her mother is busy and Imini's doing all the errands and chores and stuff. So she's pretty much all alone, save for Imini occasionally, who doesn't like talking about a lot of the things Clem does, and she never seems entirely present, and not just because she's busy. That's important later. Yeah, at the end of this slide. So it took her longer than usual to run out of art supplies, which is why she ultimately decides to go into the city during the festival after prompting from her parents, or maybe she tried asking and they said they weren't going to be going, and so she's like, okay, maybe I don't want to go. But then she's like, oh, I'm out of art supplies. So and then she realized that she could capture people in pictures, which she hasn't done in a while. And maybe her loneliness / isolation also played a part, like her subconscious kind of wanting her to go out there. Because, again, subconscious is a big part in a lot of this. Here is where we would get the differences of village and town/city life, as well as the loss of a sense of purpose and Clem not knowing what to do with herself. Maybe it's not the right time to apply for college admission, which is part of why she feels like she's in limbo. So she's planning on it, it's just not happening for her right now. We'd also get some lore and culture dumps. Not really dumps, I mean, sometimes if it's done well, dumps are fine. She can walk by plays or storytellers of people telling tales of what happened at the mountain, as well as other ones from different places, expanding the world more and showcasing some magic, because again, there's performers there. She'll still go to the shop and see Lady Yvonne. So we just added a bunch, but we still kept what was there. But then I think I mentioned it. So chapter 13. Clem decides to follow Lady Yvonne, and she overhears Phelan and her talking. Clem is in the city, and right now they're trying to find her mom. So they know Clem is in the city, or the Madigans, I should say. And they're trying to find her mom, who may be performing, because they think they can find her through her mother, because they know that she's a performer. They just need to find out which performer she is. So a timeline of Clem and Yvonne. Again, that could be from something Clem had shared or something. or that they learned when they were there, apprenticing or interning or whatever. So timeline of Clem and Ravon in the shop will need to be changed to fit this, probably. More details shared to make it work. We also learned that Lennox is there alone, and Phelan's a warden of an Endelian district, and apparently Lennox no longer wants a position, wants to switch with Phelan, since it's not what he thought it would be. Again, he's just kind of spoiled, and he wants Phelan to have the harder job because he thought it would be easy. And it pisses, or at least more exciting or more important, so he's like, oh, give it to me. And he's like, no. So it pisses her off that he isn't even taking responsibility for the village he fought for. Neither of them are. Phelan wants to get help and seems surprised when his mother agrees, but insists they're smart about who they choose because they need to be trusted / loyal. So I'm going to be saying that, like, they're trying out mages. So, like, maybe some mages will, if there were new moons between this, those mages would be having, like, a one shot of, let's see if he can do this with me, or if we work well together. Or, again, if there's those practice dreams or whatever, they can do it that way. And maybe later Ravon is super picky, so they haven't been able to find anybody, because she's super into, the trust and loyalty thing. Also, it turns out they've lost... Oh, I already said that. They've lost track of Clem's family and don't know where they are or where they're supposed to keep track. So Phelan is told to return and find something too. No, that doesn't happen. So Clem is about to get caught and has to leave. Note, in the original, Clem learns they're looking for her way later, but moved it here. It's when Lennox comes to visit Phelan. But, again, we're just altering it and restructuring it. So chapter 14. Clem will be pissed about the whole situation and knows that she needs to learn more, and she needs to make them pay. And maybe they said something that kind of exposes them to her, or makes her suspect that they are dirty, evil people they are, and, they planned a lot of stuff, and the underhanded, whatever. She has to choose between which brother to apprentice under, and ultimately chooses Phelan, because his mother is clearly the one who knows things and withholding things, and she's more likely to expose herself if she goes to Hearswith, and her main purpose is taking down the family, not helping the people she really likes. So she enlists Imini's help without telling her what she plans to do, again, same as usual, and they go back to Hearswith because she needs Mazarine's help. I like the idea of giving her this choice between the brothers to present the chance that she will reflect on it later, and the story could have gone differently depending on who she chose. And, choices having consequences, and you'll see about it later. So we're going to be giving her a lot of choices. So chapter 15. Visiting Mazarine and being informed that Lennox is taking the villagers, who aren't used to being taxed. This pisses her off even further, and essentially serves as her last chance to choose her apprentice with Lennox and with Phelan. And she will still choose Phelan. Again, which will come to regret. She will make the deal with Mazarine to disguise herself as someone else and give up her art, because the theme of... I say that so many times. Theme of choices, heavy consequences. Also, there's this... there's one I didn't mention earlier. But there's a sacrifice or danger involved in certain magic Clem likes. Like, she used magic to give herself gills so she could go underwater. But then, now she has, gill scars on, one side or something. So she had to choose between magic and art. And since she needs her magic, she chooses to forgo her art. Chapter 16. Oh, here. I forgot to add this, but this was in my original video. Since the prose is so pretty and stuff, we could really get into how an artist sees the world. So, her form of art is, colorful. It could be painting, it could be something else, but it's colorful. And so she's going to lose that, and then she's also going to lose the way she kind of perceives the world. And then later on, when she starts reteaching herself magic, it's with, charcoal. So, it still shows the consequence. And despite having the chance to relearn magic, she can't maybe relearn it the same way. Okay, so chapter 16. Waking up with the heart of stone and no longer having the artist's eye to perceive the world, nor the talent. Then, and maybe some of the romantic stuff in there as well. So then traveling home and talking to her parents and making the deal with her father after convincing him it's too late to turn back. She's already become Phelan's apprentice, or has an in of some kind. It's a lie, but it's the only way, and she doesn't feel the guilt she usually would. In fact, she doesn't really feel any guilt at all. Now it's time to talk about the heart of stone aspect. Because the reason why I made that little change at the end of her lying to her father about already being an apprentice is because, the heart of stone is starting to take effect. It's just another thing you could add to give that heart of stone more depth and more sense. I think I already said this, but I'm just going to start over. Now it's time to talk about the heart of stone aspect, as well as the fact that mirrors will still show who she truly is. I don't get as much into the mirrors, though. And what the mages not having shadows means. I don't think I can do that much either. She needs to be allowed to form a bond with Phelan, and as it goes in the story, this is supposed to keep her from doing exactly that. So, it's a hard matter to do if she's supposed to have a heart of stone. So this is a perfectly valid reason why to fairy tale this up and to tie it into the Duke of Seren, and why he became so cruel. So he did something which he did, which is having the stone heart. It's also revealed later that Ambrose has a glamour on himself as well, and likely Imini would too. Since they have glamours, it makes sense that they would have stone halves of their heart, which is not addressed. So it would be easy to have made all of the wraiths have half a stone heart. So they're essentially caricatures of who they once were, which is why they are in certain ways. Like, Imini is kind of empty in some areas. I don't know what Ambrose is. Maybe he's too focused on the job. And then later Vaughn kind of focuses on, like, the cruelty, and the Duke on the coin, and the Smith, you know, like, just stuff like that. So, Ambrose could have given up his longing for freedom and being the wild child. Because, again, it is revealed that in the legend, it was Ambrose who really was the wild child. I didn't say that. But who ends up also being the assassin. Which Clem always thought her father was a more quieter and scholarly one. But that could be because he gave up this part of himself. I hope that makes sense. So Imini maybe gave up her love or memory of Emerus, or, you know, something else to kind of make her seem distant. And maybe not all the consequences are the same, but it depends on what you want to accomplish because of it. And maybe it has to do with choice too, because you can choose what it is out of options laid out before you, just as you can choose to break it. But most don't do it, and the more you don't do it, the harder it is for you to choose not to do it. And it may feel like it's too late, because you're frequently feeling less and less like your old self, / you're incapable of it when you really aren't. So essentially this piles on, like, kind of like how anxiety works. Like, you just can't. But you really could. It's just trying to make you feel like you can't. It's all about choice, again. So Clem gives up her art, the part of her that conceives art, so maybe it includes romantic notions, I said that. And since it's a half and half situation, especially more clearly at the beginning, it makes sense for Clem to be struggling and will allow us to get more into the witchy nature of shadow in our deeper and darker selves. Okay, so I didn't talk about... Hang on. I don't know what happened to the stuff about the mirrors, but I do remember in fairy tales, like the Snow Queen and the Snow White, there's this evil mirror. Like, you could get into fairy tales with that too. And then, like, you know, like fairy tale type fables of choosing. Also, another idea I just had is when you're being given these choices of what to give up and what to get, it's also like another deciding factor is what you want to do with it. So Clem, hers is vengeance. Somebody else's might be for something else. So it affects them differently. It just depends on what you choose to do it. And so, like, since Clem chose dark, like a darker means, it has a darker effect. Whereas with Ambrose and Imini, maybe it's to protect themselves. And so, like, again, it's like that. Arc 2, Heart of Stone. Okay, so I just had to check to make sure it's still recording. So Arc 2, Heart of Stone. Clem waits for the inevitable moment. Phelan will put an ad in the paper. Maybe there's some worrying and more background life stuff going on. Or he had done it, but she knows to wait. Depending on how Heart of Stone will end up being portrayed, it's easy to say stuff like this until you're actually writing it. So throughout, I might say things that wouldn't actually work well in practice. Because there could be a flaw in her thinking of, what if he finds somebody before she arrives there? Unless, when she overheard, like, Finn and his mother talking, that it's supposed to be a trap for the Madigans, which is, you know, it would work. So in the end, it comes, and she goes, auditions, and she ends up getting it. If you haven't read the book, it's actually one of my favorite scenes of the book. What happens is she essentially tests him as he tests her, which would work well with the team cohesion thing because most applicants only focus on proving themselves. So she's not just there like, oh, look at me, look at my ability. She's actually trying to, like, test if she would want to work with him, which is kind of what they should have been doing this whole time. So chapter 18. The way the dinner chapter is in the books was really kind of a pointless scene because it doesn't really add anything. The only thing it did do was contradict her stone heart. Again, so many of these immediately after she has it. But that could work because, again, maybe as the further you get into it, the harder it is to not be like stone. But right now, she's still in that early phase where she's still kind of herself, but also the stuff missing. And later on, it'll just develop her getting darker and darker, or more focused on vengeance. Well, at least trying to. The only thing... Oh, I'm going to just re-say the sentence. The only thing it did do was contradict her stone heart she has, because it only happened because she suddenly grew uncertain that she made the right choice and could not do this, which also feeds into the overarching problem of the stone heart. So with our changes may be fine on its own. So while I'm presenting it as a different idea, it may not have to be different because we've solved the deeper issue with the heart of stone that this is still okay, as I mentioned, that, you know, it's still in the early stages. While the uncertainty could be used to showcase Clem at war with Anna, I'm just representing them both as that since it's easier, was not utilized to a point where that scene would feel worth it. All that really needs to be changed to make more sense would be, instead of the dinner being Phelan and his servants trying to convince her to accept the job, it could just be him offering it to her to celebrate / work out the details of their partnership and doing it like over a meal. But also there's this theme of men and women, not theme of the book, but just in general, like it's kind of like a trope essentially, of men and women, whoever the love interest is, dropping a lot for the main character, giving lots of exceptions. They're there to serve as a love interest only and don't really have their own personality. Not entirely the best way to explain it, but I think it's enough for you to catch my drift of a problem that is with this relationship. So changing this motive to the scene would still allow for some of the contradiction thing if necessary, and it would basically just be a great character and relationship development chapter. While also like maybe Clem / Anna in the background is kind of going through plans that she could, use and taking in information and stuff. That way it still is like plot related. So chapter 19. Training / working with and attempting to manipulate Phelan to get exactly what she wants so she can move forward with her plan easier, including wasting funds and trying to get him to offer to live with him, which is what happens in the book. So during this time, she has to pretend to know next to nothing or questions everything and purposely does her best to push any button she can while still seeming innocent. She just can't help that little vengeful pushes occasionally. Again, it's little things that get into the bigger things. During this whole time, he's also trying to figure out more about her, particularly where she lives, is worried about her safety since he knows she isn't rich, and maybe she personally doesn't shower often and stuff like that. But to her, she's projecting because she knows that they're looking for Clem and that maybe this was a trick to get them. So she might be thinking he's onto her, and there's paranoid stuff going on in the background. He still gives off Darcy vibes. It won't do any good to drop it immediately, especially since Clem does things to annoy him on purpose. He would need to get over a few things before he doesn't have a problem with it, and actually enjoys having her around to mess things up and make things interesting. Again, we don't really get his point of view, but this is just stuff to think of in the background. And if part of her plan includes being a bad student, maybe she will start getting better, but it seemed like it was due to Phelan's teaching or something like that, so that now he kind of feels special. And it could be another thing that happens when he learns the truth, is he oh man, and I thought I was this. But chapter 20. The Duke's dream and Clem thinking she's found a way in. So she's collecting the Duke's dream is what this is. And then he's asking her to spy on Phelan. So she thinks she found a way in, or maybe realizing there's a lot more to this than she thought. She can feel this is going to lead her to something big, maybe goes to her father to report. Again, more developmental action can happen between Phelan and Clem here as well, if there's room / a clean way of doing it. But for the most part, nothing really changes. It would probably be added to or altered. So the whole scene of where Clem goes to record the Duke's dream. And he's lying, remember, about the dream, and there's court intrigue and stuff. I don't know if I added this. I'm just going to say it now. There's also the fact that she may feel like the family is testing her. So she's like, okay, yes, I can capitalize on this, but I need to do it smartly, and I need to figure out if it's legit or if it's a test. Because, again, Lady Ravon wants somebody trusted and loyal. And she's paranoid now. So, yeah. So, chapter 21. The day before getting ready for first new moon, maybe Clem actually spent the night so Phelan can ensure she would be there on time, but hasn't offered it to her for extended use, which is her goal. So Phelan treats her extra specially the day leading up to it, which kind of happens in the book. It wouldn't be changed much, except to fit. And she will have to remind herself, as she's had to far more often than she thought she would, about her goal and why she wants it / needs it. I don't think I have anything coming up about the debt Phelan has to Duke, but just pretend that's mentioned, or that'll be in here somewhere. So he also seems super anxious and worried about her safety, and she's essentially seeing a whole new side of him because she doesn't really know about the night yet, unless it was told in Lady Ravon's and Phelan's conversation. So maybe part of her wonders what she could do with it and what to get out of it, because it's drastic shift and she's being more strategic and manipulative. So with my way, it's really starting to show the beginnings of what will be a Clem versus Anna to represent Clem as her versus her shadow self. Though I feel the need to mention shadow selves aren't necessarily considered bad in witchcraft. They can be repressed but often traumatized parts of yourself, and childhood selves. And witchcraft does often delve into higher self, or I guess deeper self too. So unless there's a way to portray this in the story without overcomplicating, the witchy parts won't be as fully represented, though there will be some who will enjoy what was done with it, so long as it's done well. So chapter 22. First new moon. Not with the night. So the only times she had the new moons with Phelan, it had to do with the night. But this time, we're not doing that. Or Phelan sees him and immediately gets them to leave without confronting him. Phelan is wounded. Maybe it happened after they solved the dream. So Phelan is wounded because Clem was more worried about solving the dream, more dreams than him or something. Because again, she's different now and it's getting worse. Hint towards the heart of stone being to blame, yeah. Maybe a similar situation happened before when Phelan challenged her and she helped him not die to show how she's different, cares more about the result than the team. So maybe that happened when they were challenging her. It will be passed off as her simply being impulsive, too caught up in it. She does apologize. It's too much of her. It's her first time. And maybe trying to prove herself better than him, it would have likely been grating on her to feel like he has authority over her, and he's a mentor-like figure teaching her most of what she already knows and, taking credit for it. Chapter 23, tending wounds and bonding / lying. Aside from making this fit in with the alterations, there's not much difference here. It's a good scene. I was about to say decent, but it's more than decent. It just doesn't feel like that because of the rest of it. So chapter 24, the morning after and the offering. Anne being scolded by Phelan's mother, who tells Clem her job is to protect him. Him being wounded was not supposed to happen. Maybe Deacon overheard her telling Phelan he may need to find a replacement if Clem / Anna is not suitable. Again, her mother's overprotective and controlling and stuff. Oh, you know what this reminds me of? I think I know where this plot idea came from, of getting too rigid to the point where, like, you can't turn away. It's called Gilded Ashes. It's like a spin-off of Cruel Beauty. It's like a Cinderella type tale. If you kind of want to know what I'm talking about, read that. Phelan will be all like, well, I can't blame her. Again, she is new at this, and maybe meant all the dreams and nightmares seem to be getting stronger or more erratic. Maybe it's not happening, maybe it is. So he's either lying on her behalf or it's a legit problem. He will then offer his house to Anna, Clem, to stay in permanently, using extra trading as an excuse and time to get to work together. That was their first time being tested in the field rather than in a contained protected area, and they have some kinks to work out. So it could be a good time for Clem / Anna to have a conflict, because Clem would be attracted and like it, and Clem would be all, don't forget the mission. Don't forget what he did to you. Remember, he's only doing this to further your own ends. Stuff like that. And again, if Clem was attracted to the brothers earlier, that could be used against her, because she said in the book that she's not a prude, essentially. So that could be stuff that she's going through as well. So chapter 25, trying to snoop. The Duke has contacted her again, or asked for some information, but she's not sure she wants to ally with him yet. Oh, yep, due to overhearing the conversation. Here it is. I just didn't realize it. But she's also wondering why she needs to be so loyal and trusting, thinks if she can prove herself, she'll find things out and may have to reel back her search for dirt, since maybe the ways she was doing it before led to her nearly being caught. Again, that's something I didn't really mention, but she is doing this. She is trying to find stuff. She just keeps running into dead ends. So maybe it has to do with Deacon, Deacon, who she knows is almost always eavesdropping in places he shouldn't be. So maybe he may see her doing something or find a journal or whatnot and tell Phelan. She's worried about that happening. While Clem likes the kid, Anna sees him as a threat, because the closer she gets to him, the more comfortable and intrusive he gets with her. Maybe there has been or will be a talk with Phelan about it. Phelan will need to have a conversation with him. Also, it would be cool if Clem is snooping on people by going through their dreams in the nightmare log. I like the idea of her wishing at some point, probably in the beginning, that she could see people's good dreams rather than bad dreams all the time. But never mind. This changed. This was my original idea. I just didn't read through it well enough. Oh, I initially started this note with thinking she could figure something out about Deacon, so Anna wants to scare him, but endears him to Clem. Or just something, or maybe something to trick him into not doing something, or to, whatever. Make him more, more trusting. Maybe a partner in crime. I don't know. Chapter 26, meeting friends / learning about Phelan's childhood. Phelan will reveal that he wants her to meet them because he's going to be away, but wants her to have support if she needs it, / people she knows she can turn to. This will mostly be a dialogue-filled chapter, but also expanding on Phelan's character and what life is like in Endelion, and Clem would likely compare it to the quiet village life of Hearswith and then miss it angering her further, and she can't feel those mushy feelings. Maybe not much of the Hearswith thing. It could be there if it's not too repetitive. So this would be a world development chapter, and maybe foreshadowing as well as character development. Because maybe, I don't get into it, but Olivet and her other friends could have more of a purpose later on. Because again, we want the depth of the characters, side characters. Chapter 27, he leaves for a few days / a week to visit his brother, and she realizes she misses him, some reasons why she misses him. This happens in the book, but she can't miss him. Highlight how much she feels alone with no one and nothing to grasp onto, and / anchor. I'm just adding to the emotions, essentially. Maybe she does hang out with his friends, or they stop over once or twice, but she hardly knows them, so the effect of their presence is minimal. She would also have Phelan's servants, but part of it's the mother and the son, essentially. But part of the reason why she feels she's alone could be due to the maybe unconscious realization that she can't get too close with the people close to Phelan because of her goal. Also, she knows he's gone to Hearswith, and so will have some pangs of longing of some kind as well. Also, she will be doing this digging for information, but may instead learn something about him or find something that he clearly plans to give her. Anna, not Clem, she reminds herself. So, maybe it's a present of some kind that endears her further to him. If it's the Duke helping him thing, then clearly the Duke is very proud of his investment. Oh, she finds dirt about that. Yeah, so she'll find something, because while he's gone, she snoops his room or office or something, because the mother and son aren't there all the time, so she's alone there at night, so she can do snooping. And she's like, finally! Okay, so chapter 28. Phelan returns, and the flirting moment in the book happens, and she starts justifying her feelings and saying she can use this to her advantage, because, Anna's, after her. She may be calling up a whole list of reasons to not miss him or like him, either in this one or the last. Also, he will reveal that he will be going to Hereswith to help his brother. He will get someone to work here on the new moon. Maybe he was going to go alone, but she insists. So he will reveal that he plans to summon Clem to help him. He has something to do with it. Reveal it will be with the painting he took from Elle, paid for it, but still, he's going to burn one of Clem's painting that she was immensely proud of, and she's going to be looking for reasons to hate him. So the failed summoning will happen, and Clem is rightly pissed, but has to pretend not to be. It's just another mark added up against him. Maybe she's keeping a tally in her head, or a journal of things he did that I hated or something. Again, it's a petulant vengeance, a small petty that grows into bigger stuff. I don't know why I gotta keep repeating that. I just do. So, chapter 29. This chapter could feature preparations, tracking, traveling, and going around Hereswith pre-new moon. Phelan will have to go to his friends to help, to take care of his district, or at least talk to them, for that new moon, and they'll be worried or mention how he's acting unusual and tells Anna to look out for him and don't let him do anything crazy. In the books, it says he's had 5 new moons, but only did 1 himself. I would probably change that unless I want to bring up people thinking he's incompetent or only using his position for the money or, for the position, and doesn't actually want to put forth the effort. Maybe he did 3, for my changes. Maybe he did 3, got injured on the 4th, hired someone for the 5th. The 6th he would have been in Hereswith, for despite the injury, which can rightly be used to explain his absence for that new moon, and the 7th. So, just adding a few more new moons in there, and then, yeah. Exactly how this happens depends on how the story went at the beginning. So during these preparations, this could be brought up here. There would need to be a reason for Lennox not just hiring help outside of the family, and would likely be because the family wants to keep it under wraps, and maybe a character flaw of Lennox's that may or may not coincide with Clem's. So they're trying to keep under wraps that Hereswith is struggling right now over one of the nightmares. So this is also when Lennox and Clem as Anna would meet. So the conversation Lennox has with Phelan about her being plain in appearance that she overhears would happen here instead. Maybe something else to make Anna and Clem hate him more. Happens in the book. Again, this is just another scene we were able to preserve but altered to fit the new story structure. The nightmares would also only occur every night now. Chapter 30 and 31. Again, dedicating 2 chapters instead of 1 to the nightmare. So this will be when Clem finally meets the knight for the first time. If they didn't know about it previously, which is what I'm basing it on, they won't have had time to get stuff made. But it's possible to work it around and potentially shorten the length of the book to make it so they do know by now. I'm just not doing it for this. So we will also get to know Lennox more and the family's potentially toxic relations and Phelan's not being perfect and Lennox isn't as bad as Clem thought. So all this is happening in the backdrop of the nightmare because a lot of these problems arise and yeah, the brothers don't work together and they tend to fight with each other or something. At the very least, the Lennox not being as bad as it seems is only not that bad to the readers, but to Clem's stone heart, it's harder for her to see past that. Maybe there's also a realization or mention that Clem/Anna and Lennox are similar in some aspects. Basically, these chapters will serve to open up topics, events, developments that will be important down the road, and maybe the nightmare they're solving kind of reflects certain problems they're having. Like Clem realizing the mistakes she made and is unsure how to continue. There will also be physical action to add tension to this all and make Clem/Anna be out of her zone. Phelan could notice something off about her and maybe finds it suspicious how easily she's able to do some of this because, again, she knows the villagers and likely knows where which dream is coming from. So if we are doing the kill the dreamer thing, then what would show up here, and maybe it's only solved when the dreamer or dreamers kills themselves or, they had to kill them because it's just too much. Maybe it's to kill in their sleep too. Oh. So I will then need to add mourning and revealing from this in the following chapters. So if they're not there, just pretend they are. Chapter 32. Clem will snoop and she could go back to the village to try and get rumors/information. Possibly to distract herself while also trying to find a way to make it up to the villagers for subjecting them to this. And the war between Anna/Clem is when this really starts to take a turn for the worse. So again, choices are essentially getting more and more worse. And now there's the start that's really, 2 versus 2 instead of one person versus this just poking thing. Now it's a full blown other person. So Anna wants to blame Lennox and Clem blames herself, something with that. If she doesn't do it herself, maybe she will have asked Mazarine in the first chapter of this arc to do it, to go check on the count or get information and stuff. And will then go collect what she got from Lennox. But I do like the idea, because maybe she asked Mazarine in the first chapter to or when she goes to get the disguise, to keep an eye on Lennox and tell her of certain things. Because she thinks there's, nasty stuff going on. So I would explain why Lennox could have learned that Mazarine is a troll because she's inviting him over to learn stuff from him. Or something like that. So I do like the idea of Clem going herself to check on how the villagers are doing and wishing she can help in some way, but she's Anna, so she can't. She realizes how her connection along to this place is affecting her stone heart, and she needs to do something drastic before it breaks. So before it was kind of just like little taps, taps, cracking, but now it's like full blown, I'm gonna shatter. So if we are doing the war thing, the war between the two people thing, it would tie into that somehow, maybe in an attempt to compromise, let Anna be angry and let Clem be sad. And she will go to Mazarine for that, which is where she could get the information, when she'll get the information. And we'll have to destroy one or a few of her paintings that hold some kind of meaning. Remember, she buried her stuff, like, in the ground. And maybe she'll burn some of that, or maybe some paintings Mazarine had that she got from the town after the family left, because I find it weird that Clem wouldn't have done pictures for, like, the villagers, and that the brothers wouldn't have utilized it, since, you know, they did find one. But it was a secret between her and Elle. You know, we already established Elle keeps secrets. So maybe the fact that she can't even help by giving the villagers something beautiful like she did for her Elle, she longs for her art, and maybe that plays into it. So while her subconscious self would clearly be fighting it, maybe the stone heart is taking over, because when faced with the decisions between the two, she keeps choosing the stone and giving it more and more power and importance over the rest of her heart. So maybe it's like a thing that, like, it could even, like, it doesn't start as like a half a stone, but like it grows, and it's so, like, it'll be her whole heart. But at the same time, there's always room for the thing to shatter. So, like, even though it seems to cover the whole heart, you can still break it. You just really, really don't feel like you can. So, and this is where Clem and the Anna thing would really start. Yep. Rather than questioning herself, hesitating, and having thoughts. So now she actively has this other part of her. Very repetitive stuff I am saying. Okay. So Arc 3, Game of Cards. Chapter 33. Throughout the nightmare sequence and this aftermath, we'll see more of Lennox's character and maybe how toxic his and Phelan's relationship is. Because it's possible we couldn't have fit that into the nightmare, and that's why I have it in both these places. Because, like, if it doesn't fit here, it can fit here. And it's not all Lennox's fault, it's Phelan's fault too. And he's no longer too perfect of, like, a character that's only there to serve, you know, as a love interest. And the archetype of the Darcy type character. So, and during the celebration / distraction from the grief is when Clem will have her realization about the enchanted cards, and would play a game of it, since none of them can dream, so it won't be a problem anyway. Also, whatever she learned about Lennox while talking to Mazarine in the first part will be addressed here. She will finally recognize his more subtle good qualities that she failed to. Or not. That doesn't happen. That doesn't make sense to happen. Cut that out. So, chapter 34. On their journey back, maybe Clem shifts her goals after realizing how short-sighted she's been, or at least alters it so it's the brothers, mother, and Duke who will be taken to... Oh my gosh. I think I get into it at the end. Anyway. But I missed a major part about the nightmare sequence in Here's With, but that'll be addressed later. Or at least alters it so that it's the brothers, mother, and Duke who will be taken down, since after getting to know both brothers more, she realizes they're only pawns in the game. Also, there will be a bunch of tension between her and Phelan here, maybe a romantic moment. It would likely involve comforting each other or venting, or maybe personal secret sharing. Maybe he hugs her, but Clem wanted him to kiss her then, like, she realizes it. Anna's, like, pissed and totally against it, and makes Clem feel bad about herself or unsure for wanting this. May unwittingly lead Clem to try manipulating Anna, so manipulating her own inner self, essentially, by saying she's manipulating Phelan. So, like, they could use this, you know, together, because it's not just a bad thing, because Clem's also learning how to, like, talk to herself, you know, the inner self more, and be a bit more strategic, because she has to be, because, you know, Anna knows a lot more than most people do about herself. Maybe a bit contrived, but something like this would probably happen. So, chapter 35. They're at home, still reeling and trying to decide how to continue and change up their plans. It may be possible to include the scene somewhere within this arc of him destroying the library after going to meet his mother and telling Anna to get far from their family, and that may be what prompts her to fully act on any desires or thoughts she had of switching goals, makes it more certain, therefore she can act. Which brings up another potential thing her stone heart could do to her. Before she was too impulsive, and now she's too slow to act, because she's, if we're not doing the shadow self thing, but I prefer the shadow self. It's just, I'm providing little idea bunnies of options, alternatives we could get, if we don't want to change it as drastically as we're doing it. So just because it would make her tend to be more strategic does not mean she would be good at it. And that could be used further within the story to show development later on, because she's learning how to do both, when to act and when to think kind of thing, and to actually be strategic. And know people more, that she doesn't, like, have to interact with via, like, dream interviews or whatever. So this would lead her to share what she learned about the Wraith card game at the end of this chapter. Maybe she also learns it's too late, or almost too late, to get rid of Anna, and wants to feel out how Phelan would react if he learned the truth and she broke it, you know, early. Meanwhile, Phelan, despite not wanting to be further indebted to the Duke, and not entirely trusting him, will go to him for help against the Knight, for the shield and the armor, because his only other option is his mother, and she's far worse. And he is willing to do this because of his feelings for Anna. This would be happening in the background, but maybe Anna/Clem overhears him talking about it to someone, or Deacon tells her, or the Smith does when she goes to collect it, or something like that. So, chapter 36. So they will be fitted with enchanted shields, maybe some light armor and a weapon of choice or something. Maybe they already had it. Oh, this is a flaw. This is a major flaw in this. Anyway, that's okay. That's the point of this. Is not a perfect story. Okay, or since the Smith and Duke would lead him to is actually one of Phelan's warden friends that we've met's father. Again, he's a Smith and he's a Wraith. He could just as easily turn to that friend for help. So he would go to Olivet or Nura for help. But then the Smith would tell the Duke. So maybe or his mother. I don't know. Again, I've already established this is flawed. Maybe those wardens do have real armor instead of just enchanted, again, to show the difference of warden strategies and to add more flavor to the world. So it's possible, it would be weird, since they can't go to the Smith, they might have to go to an enchanter, unless the Smith could do both, which I think it said he could. Maybe it's not as flawed. Okay, so again, what happens is determined by what makes the most sense in this part of the story, and what will have more an effect on it down the road. A big factor to consider is how much of the Duke and these friends we will see and how balanced they are in importance. If you wanted to make the relationship with the friends more apparent / shown more, you can make their involvement more important later. In the books, they were just backdrop characters. Also, if Phelan is now even further disinclined to trust the Duke, knowing his relation to his mother and the involvement with the things he may want to distance himself with, because remember, he doesn't really approve of their plans. However, he could also reason that it's best not to drag anyone else into this, and he doesn't know that the Smith person would be a Wraith, and so again, they're just trying to keep everything close to their chest. Since we don't see a whole lot of who Phelan is and why he makes decisions and how his mind works in the book, it could be anything really. A way I may attempt to merge the two ideas, and this is I already mentioned that. I have a script. And I say this all the time, I just need to follow it. I'm not good at that. So there's also going to the Duke, then his friends finding out about it, and there is a scene dedicated to that, of them like being worried or something. No matter what it is, maybe it leads to the realization of Clem that the Smith is a Wraith. I don't know if she would share this information with Phelan or not. Chapter 37. Phelan and Clem will play the card game together once New Moon is right around the corner. Not much will change from here the book, only what would make it fit with the new additions to the story and lore. So they're doing it on purpose to ensure that the knight will be there for the next new moon, because he can only come in when those cards are played, and a dream comes from them. So chapter 38. Neither of them are dreamt, but Clem keeps the fact that she didn't a secret. Willing to trust him with some things, but not everything. After all, he's loyal and likes Anna, not Clem. There is no saying he will give Clem the same care and thought as he did Anna, especially if he knew that Clem still plans what still Clem plans to do or is considering. And there's more about the past Ambrose apprentice thing and the here's with thing. It's not here for some reason, but I do put it at the end. So there's also the chance he may choose his family over her, regardless of who he thinks she is. Also, make mention of the dinner party that's coming up, like right around the corner. She will suspect that the family is a group of madcaps, and maybe she realizes she is as well, because she could realize they're gathering the race, which no one else has done. So they very well could do it, and she kind of wants to be a part of it. Again, it's iffy. This will make her less of a terrible detective and critical thinker. She doesn't like put it together at all before. Note, I had an alternate idea of Clem actually exposing something about the family after maybe meeting someone else who had beef against the family, the mercurial mage Phelan's been hiring, or just a journalist type person simply doing their job, and that's what will cause the fallout between Anna and Phelan. However, Phelan still wouldn't know Anna is Clem. He would just think she's in league with her. This would open a whole new slew of possibilities. Like maybe he wants Anna to tell her where Clem is, but will settle with Anna simply telling him to tell her the questions so she can reach out to Clem, and meanwhile she's learning, about him, due to what questions he wants to ask. So this could get Clem the chance to dig for more information. This would also complicate the relationship, and on their next new moon they would be out of sync. Again, this is not coinciding with the plot I have. It's just another angle we could go. Or maybe, so anyway, this is a really long sentence. So the next new moon they would be out of sync, or maybe Anna does something that shows Phelan she's not against him and gets hurt in the process, and he ends up forgiving her and admitting he knows what it's like to have conflicting loyalties. So they kind of forgive each other a bit. And maybe that's when he would decide to do the whole, maybe you should stay away from me and my family thing. But I chose not to do this route, because this book is less about dueling and more about dreams, and to include it would be making this book longer and more complicated, or would replace other scenes that I'm trying to preserve to stick as close to the author's vision as I can while implementing my new ideas. So chapter 39. May not happen, but since there's a party coming up, it could very well involve dancing, and therefore a teaching to dance and teaching to have etiquette manners chapter. Again, this would include some romantic tension, almost kiss, or a real kiss, I don't know. And the focus would be developmental action between these two characters more so than anything else. However, they would also talk about game plan strategies for the new moon and stuff about the mystery. Maybe they start out with that, but Phelan tells her he doesn't want to think about that right now. He just wants to enjoy this. I like this order more than enjoying it than talking, because Clem Stoneheart would likely make her want to get down to business first, since pretending to be doing this to manipulate Phelan could make the shadow less of a presence. I hope you get what I'm saying, because I don't. I mean, I do, but like, not what that sentence is saying. Okay. Chapter 40. Facing the Nightmare Knight with the goal of taking off his helm so they can see who it is. Again, not much will be different, save for making it fit with the additions. It will end the same way of Clem realizing it's her father and, she's getting strangled and stuff. So chapter 41. This would essentially be chapters 29 and 30 merged from the past one. They were both short chapters anyway. But again, it doesn't really matter. They could still be two different chapters. So which means it covers Phelan helping her since the knight strangled her before realizing who she was, and the tending to the wounds thing. Clem will send him away to finish taking care of herself, and will later go to find and talk to her dad because Phelan's gone or something. However, it will exclude her confrontation with Phelan, because that happens at the end of the 30. But that's going to have its own chapter. So chapter 42. When she returns, Phelan will learn who she really is, and they will have the confrontation and fight before he will leave her there, maybe. I'll get into that later. I would also move some more of the conversation they had while at the Kirstucci here about why she's doing this. However, there would need to be some alterations to fit its new position in the story. And then chapter 43. This is where I get into the other babies. So rather than them not seeing each other until the party, it's possible they would find a way to make them continue to work together anyway to show how rocky their relationship now is, because neither of them can trust the other when the plot starts thickening. I'm going to have to re-say this. But another thing that could happen that would prompt fodder for Phelan being suspecting of Anna is Deacon does find, her journal that she's keeping. So rather than exposing the family, he can just realize she's collecting that stuff. You could fit it in here, maybe. So the plot is thickening, and because Phelan holds her secret in his hands and can use it against her, so they can blackmail each other on stuff. And maybe she did succeed in finding out, a tidbit of information she could hold against them. So it would definitely mean that during the fight, neither of them would kind of go for the kill, or super serious shots. So while I can kind of understand why Phelan may not have exposed her, since he may not only have feelings, but also realize he did indeed wrong her first, so this isn't as uncalled for as it seems, especially since he's learned more about his mother's goals, and he realizes this is bigger than them, or still needs to be kept close. Again, we don't get much about Phelan, so there's a lot of different reasons this could be. It's not all presented well in the story. Even though he could have had this stuff going on in the background, it's just not good enough. So, but they will come, not maybe all of it, but some of it. But they will come to an agreement and maybe have a discussion of how their partnership will move forward. That kind of mirrors but shows the differences of the conversation they had when he hired her. But again, it's not entirely necessary, so it would be one of the first scenes I would cut out and just, leave it like it was. So I just like showing alternatives. And I'm not saying include a whole new new moon thing. It can just be an agreement to still go to the party together. He lets her stay. So for the first time, she will put enchantments or warning spells on the door in case he goes to her room or something happens. Paranoid Anna, heart stuff going on. Chapter 44. If I did this still around each other going to dinner together, this chapter would be about getting ready for the party, and Phelan's servants would notice things are off, but are clearly not in the know of what really transpired. All they know is there was a falling out / argument. Maybe I couldn't fit this. Maybe if I couldn't fit in the scene of Clem eavesdropping on one of Phelan's conversations with Deacon, the child servant, it could happen here, and it would happen between Phelan and Mrs. Sterling, / the caretaker, mother servant, where she wants to know what happened and wants him to fix it because he seems so much happier with Anna around. Or maybe she's focused more on protecting him and reveals that Anna does some questionable, suspicious things or something like that. It depends on the story. A lot of it just depends on everything. Okay, so chapters 45, 46, 47, 48. While I won't go into details, it won't be much different from the book's version of the dinner party, only altered to fit this new version and expanded on to showcase character development and relationships, and to have more suspense and tension and the like, and secrets kind of, being revealed or trying to be revealed. With maybe some action, and Clem trying to figure out which party members are the wraiths, and to snoop on family members, but maybe Phelan keeps getting in her way and having an argument or something before the reveal happens. So Ross attempts to have this courtly intrigue thing during the dinner party, but more so when they're in the Mountain Duchy, and it just doesn't work or feel organic at all. This would give us more courtly intrigue that we were promised, and it fits well with the story, unlike the marriage duel. You can do that, but it's just less important, doesn't fit much as well. In the original book, that mostly happens at the end again, but it's presented also takes away from the whole dream aspect, because it's more about court intrigue than the dreams, and if you're going into the Mountain of Dreams, you kind of want to be more about dreams. So you want the dreams or like Stoneheart or like all the plot stuff to be more forefront and the court intrigue to be on the back burner rather than the other way around, which is what the book has. Okay, we are almost done. Arc 4, Mountain of Dreams. Not getting into details here. I will say, though, that with what I mentioned previously about connecting the Heart of Stone plot to the real plot / Duke and Wraiths, it's possible some sacrifices are made, including character deaths, moments where the Wraiths and Clem essentially are given their final chances to overcome this curse they brought on themselves and others. And by final, it's not that their heart fully turns to stone or devours them, or like they're really too far gone. It will involve isolating themselves from everyone, and those people will team up against them. So it's not really like a supernatural, oh, you're destroyed now because you did this, or you turned into a monster. It's literally just because, I hope you get what I'm saying. I don't know how to explain it. But it's the other people reacting towards your cruelty, which is essentially what happened to the Duke of Saren. You know? So it has more to do with the psychology and what people do to those who go too far. There would need to be some development on how / why the nightmare thing happened, aside from it just happening because the Duke died and left a curse behind. Again, not getting into it. Maybe it ties into the Heart of Stone, worst selves. I guess I am getting a little into it. Worst of selves, people we pretend to be, people we think we are when we are really something else. So many different things. It would dive into stuff like that. Don't know which one. And a lot more character study like nightmares going on. What happens in the book is it's dreams that are like also showing like the court intrigue of what happened when the Duke died and was killed. Like, it'd be... I'm not gonna get into it. So maybe the nightmares were always there, but it's the good dreams or something that were held back, hidden away, or like more of the good dreams had held back, hidden away. It depends on if we do the other dream thing of telling whether you can tell it's a dream or not. But this version of the good dreams being hidden away is more like the original, because they only record nightmares. They just call them a dream sometimes too. And so the absence of the dreams, like the good dreams, is what makes the nightmares worse and more powerful. It's not just the absence of them, but without them, it's like a balance thing. Like, now they have more ground to gain, and yeah. Also, here's where I get into the partner thing. Maybe Ambrose was responsible for whatever happened to the apprentice / partner, and he did it to protect the secret / his family. And this partner could re-show up after the Here's With sequence, either as dead, or maybe he will start helping Lennox with the mountain stuff. Like, maybe they didn't solve everything, they just did the worst ones, and now they can do it together. And since he already knows the villagers, like, it can work better. Again, it depends on everything else. So, the Ambrose / Embers reveal of which twin is what would be more meaningful if Clem had more reason to think her father wouldn't do some of what he did, and again with the Stoneheart thing. I'm personally not a fan of twin twists, but I think it works here since from the beginning we're aware they're twins, and it's a fairy tale-like story. Really, when twins are used to, like, when you don't know there's a twin, and then, you know, things are explained because there is a twin, it's just overdone. I don't want to see not well done, because sometimes maybe it really is, but it also kind of seems cheap at times. You just gotta do it right. So, like with the past apprentice or something, yeah, we would get more of a conversation when Clem learns the truth about her father, since she realizes she's not much different, because, you know, she has the Stoneheart thing and she's not a wraith. And again, the whole conversation of whether it's too late to change. There's so much we could do with this to enhance the themes and plot points the author already had. However, all this would come with its own problems, like the length of the book. This would at least add like 100 to 200 pages to the book, and it might not be worth it. So it could be turned into 2 books. I thought of a name for the alternate book. So Dreams Lie Beneath, Shadows Lie Within, you know, or Shadows Hide Within. That would be a good one. But also, some of the reviews, and a lot of people really like standalone fantasies, but you also don't see a whole lot of duologies. That's mostly trilogies or epics. Another thing we do is cut out some bloat and find ways to present what's happening in less pages. So it would involve a lot more reworking and throwing stuff out, but also replacing it with something that, like, has more to do with everything, which is hard to do. There's also the fact that in Heart of Stone, people will hate the slower / more character and relationship driven pace and want to get to the plot. She wrote 2 books before this, like Queen's Resistance and something else. And a big complaint with them was how it mostly turned into a development between, like, the romance characters and less about the plot. So that's why I think it's kind of not as done here, but it also overcompensated. But overall, I feel like I haven't read the other one, but with how different this one is from other, like, YA books I've read, despite having similar tropes and stuff, I do think it would be more interesting here, especially with all this added stuff in the psychology aspect of it, that it would still be worth it. But, you know, not everybody would think that. I did try to accommodate for that by showing Clem trying and giving reasons why she couldn't do it immediately, like why it wouldn't work. But still, people might not appreciate that. If you made it this far, thank you. I do still plan to read more Rebecca Ross books, and I do think she's a fine author. It's just the culture of traditional publishing and nature of creative jobs doesn't allow for the author and their ideas to truly shine, or for the author to have a whole lot of time to write them sometimes. Publishers and some readers treat books like drugs, wanting a quick hit before moving on to the next thing, which means people will not stick around long enough to get into the depth or added intricacies, even if it was portrayed. Again, on the reread, you could see a lot more of like the intricacies going on and like why some people said certain things that might have seemed inorganic until you realize why they said what they said. But it wasn't enough, because I did reread it. So another thing they do is to fit in with the trend going on, instead of like trying to make their own new trend and market it as a similar this hit or that hit. And in so doing, they give people expectations that don't coincide with what they should actually suspect. Which, like, I haven't really started on Storygraph. I'm too used to Goodreads and I'm trying to transition. But, like, it should be more like... Storygraph has this unique feature. This is not sponsored or anything anyway. Of, like, you can tag it with, like, slow pace, medium pace, fast pace, and then, like, some trope tags and stuff. But, like, you can more easily give the reader, like, realistic expectations of, like, read this if you're in the mood for an adventure or, like, a slow romance or this or that, like, rather than just, oh, it was so whimsical and evocative and lush and potent and stuff like that. Like, words that nobody actually really cares about because they all know it's BS. And essentially the person is trying to make their own writing, like, sound really good when, like, that trumps trying to give an accurate opinion. You know what I mean? Hopefully you do. Despite making this video, I did enjoy this book. It's perfect for people who don't want the added depth if it means having a larger book. And this book did have unique identity, and the reason I made this is because I just couldn't get out of my mind. Granted, that had to do with all the thoughts that would have made it reached its potential I saw in it, so like potential I put on it. Even without all these in-depth changes, it's possible with just a few tweaks and minor additions. It would be better than what it was because the core of the book isn't bad, it's just shy of being there. Like, at the peak it could have been. Like another review said, all it really needed was probably just one more round of edits. But those are expensive, which is why I'm trying to teach techniques in a way that won't involve me regurgitating the same thing over and over again and actually applying them to real stories. While I tried to preserve the original vision in this one, again, there may be others where I decide to do it differently, or to fit in with a specific challenge. Because again, this is all in the name of like making your creative brain work better. And it's not just like structure and stuff. It's literally asking the right questions and applying them in different ways. So I hoped you learned something or were inspired by something within this video. If you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing, though I don't have an established publishing schedule. And if you have any recommendations for books based on what I said I like here, please let me know. My TBR pile may reach the moon, but I never want to run out of things to read. That was so cheesy. If you want to know what I'm working on next, I've got a post in my community tab. Have a nice day, and see you guys next time.